Chapter 660. In a daze, Yang Tian heard someone calling his name, and he answered out of reflex. Ha ha ha! Seeing that Yang Tian had agreed, Huihe Baixing laughed happily. Little Blue Dragon was awake at this time, but he was more than happy to watch the show. He did not remind Yang Tian. The one who was most surprised was Huihe Chanchan. She frowned and felt a little jealous, just like when her sister took away her toy when she was young. After Huihe Baixing stopped laughing, he said to Huihe Miao Miao, "Auntie, Yang Tian ate too many starry fruits. Take him away to rest." "Yes." Huihe Miao Miao answered and helped Yang Tian up. Then, she helped Yang Tian out of the hall. "Let's prepare for a celebration tomorrow. Auntie is my sister, so we can't mistreat her." After Huihe Miao Miao helped Yang Tian away, Huihe Baixing said with a smile. Yes, everyone stood up and bowed respectfully. The rules of marriage in this world were different from those on Earth. On Earth, the wedding ceremony was held before entering the bridal chamber. But in this world, the rules were, get on the train first, then buy the ticket. However, there were special rules for entering the bridal chamber, especially for the cultivators. If the groom wanted to enter the bridal chamber, he would have to go through all kinds of tests. This procedure was saved for Yang Tian. Huihe Miao Miao helped Yang Tian to her residence and entered a luxurious room. Then, she placed Yang Tian on a large round bed. The maidservants who were waiting on the side helped Yang Tian up and took off all his clothes and accessories. Then, Yang Tian was placed in a steaming hot pool in the room. After that, the maidservants bowed to Huihe Miao Miao and left the room. The little blue dragon followed them here. It knew what was going to happen next. Its eyes were full of smiles as it flew out of the house. Yang Tian, who had eaten too many starry fruits, felt his whole body go limp and he became even more confused. If the pool water was ice cold, he might have woken up immediately. However, the pool water was hot. Not only did it not wake Yang Tian up, it made him feel even hotter in his daze. Actually, the water beast soup wasn't that bad. It was just that the Radiance 100 Star had purposely made it taste that way. In order to accompany Yang Tian, the Patriarch of the Radiance Calamity Baixing and the Elders of the Radiance Calamity tribe had suffered greatly. Water beasts were cold by nature while starry fruit was warm by nature. The correct way to eat these two foods was to drink the water beast soup first before eating the starry fruit, or to eat the starry fruit first before drinking the water beast soup. If it was eaten alone, it would end up like Yang Tian. Even if Yang Tian only drank the water beast soup and didn't eat the starry fruit, he would still end up like this. However, at that time, he wouldn't feel hot. He would feel cold. Yang Tian hadn't been in this world for long, so he didn't know about these things. Karcha didn't know either because only the upper echelons of society had the opportunity to enjoy these two food. Normally, they were used to liven things up. In the room, Huihe Miao Miao looked at Yang Tian who was leaning against the edge of the pool. She took off her boots and walked in front of a large mirror. Looking at herself in the mirror, Huihe Miao Miao slowly took off her clothes. Even if this body was hers, Huihe Miao Miao looked at herself in the mirror and was very satisfied. Unfortunately, soon, this body would belong to Yang Tian. Huihe Miao Miao walked into the pool. With a splash, Huihe Miao Miao dived into the water. Oh, after a while, Yang Tian raised his head and let out a comfortable cry. Outside the room, the little blue dragon narrowed its eyes and listened to the movements from inside. Little Blue Dragon didn't want to care about such things. Even though it knew that Yang Tian would be in big trouble in the future. Yang Tian was moving around instinctively. To him, Huihe Miao Miao's body was like a huge block of ice that he wanted to melt into. The next day, Yang Tian, who was lying on the round bed, suddenly opened his eyes. At this moment, his eyes were clear. The bed was very soft, as if he was lying in the clouds. There was a light fragrance in his nose. This wasn't the hard bed that he was used to sleeping on. Yang Tian immediately sat up. When he saw the situation next to him, Yang Tian let out a cry of surprise. Huey Meow Meow was lying on her side, facing Yang Tian. The smooth and thin white blanket covered Huey Meow Meow's body, revealing her beautiful female curves. The cry woke Huey Meow Meow up. She opened her eyes. Even though they were in a relationship, Yang Tian and Huey Meow Meow looked at each other. There were no romantic feelings in their eyes. Yang Tian suddenly understood that he had been tricked by Huey Meow Meow yesterday. Even though Huey Meow Meow didn't have any bad intentions, Yang Tian was still unhappy. This was the second time. Last time, it was Yang Nancy. This time, it was Huey Meow Meow. Yang Tian didn't know what to say. It's morning, Huey Meow Meow said calmly. Yang Tian nodded and immediately got down from the bed. He found the clothes beside the bed and put them on. He turned around and looked at Huey Meow Meow, who was holding her head and staring at him. Yang Tian turned around, gritted his teeth and left the room. After he left the room, a green shadow flashed and the little blue dragon landed on Yang Tian's shoulder. Looking at the smiling little blue dragon, Yang Tian pretended to be angry and said, "Xiao Long, I've decided not to roast meat for you for a year." Squeak, the little blue dragon protested. Yang Tian only snorted coldly. No one can stop my plan. After Yang Tian walked out of Huey Meow Meow's room, he passed through a long corridor and arrived at a small courtyard. After he exited the small courtyard, he arrived at the entrance of the large courtyard. Yang Tian hid behind the screen wall and looked outside. As expected, there were many guards outside. Yang Tian could imagine that there must be a lot of people outside right now. As long as he went out, he would definitely be caught. Furthermore, Huey Baixing was waiting outside. Yang Tian could guess what would happen next. He was forced to marry Huey Meow Meow. After sleeping with her sister, he had to give her an explanation, right? However, this was not a problem for Yang Tian. The rune system of this dungeon was designed by a strange program. Yang Tian took out a few green stones from his storage bracelet. Under the control of the strange program, he quickly carved runes on them. Then, he set up a simple teleportation rune array. Looking at the teleportation rune array, Yang Tian was about to step into it. However, he suddenly stopped and kicked away one of the green stones that formed the teleportation rune array. If he left just like that, he would not be a man. Why did you stop? At this moment, Huey Meow Meow's voice sounded behind Yang Tian. It turned out that after Yang Tian left the room, Huey Meow Meow put on her clothes and followed him out. I will take responsibility, but I still have to go to the hunting division. Yang Tian turned around and looked at Huey Meow Meow with a determined expression. Let's go together. Huey Meow Meow smiled. Chapter 661. 3 days later. In a secret and spacious room, the patriarch, Hueha Baixing, was sitting face to face with a middle-aged man in black. Patriarch, you have miscalculated. Yang Tian still joined our hunting division in the end? The middle-aged man in black said calmly. This middle-aged man in black was the head steward of the hunting division. If Yang Tian was here, he would definitely recognize him as the third patriarch. The third patriarch was the head steward of the hunting division. There were less than 10 people in the Hui family, including the third patriarch himself. Hueha Baixing smiled and said, that might not be the case. He has a relationship with Auntie now. If Auntie needs his help, he won't ignore it. I can see that Yang Tian is a person who values relationship. In the future, even if he doesn't stay in the Hui family, he won't be our enemy. The middle-aged man in black said, you are always right. However, I feel that there is no need to pay such a huge price for a talisman Dao genius. If this matter spreads, it won't be good for our family's reputation. When it came to handling matters, the third patriarch was more forceful. He was used to using force to solve problems. In his mind, the current patriarch thought too highly of Yang Tian. Another thing was that people in different positions would look at the problem differently. For the sake of the family's rise, Hueha Baixing didn't want to let go of any opportunity or talent. The third patriarch didn't need to consider so much. You know what I want to say to you, right? Hueha Baixing was silent for a moment before speaking again. The third patriarch said, "It's not like you don't know the rules of the hunting division. I won't give him any special treatment. You have to know that if I really do that, I will break the rules of the hunting division. Without the rules, you know what the consequences will be." After the third patriarch finished speaking, Hueha Baixing sighed helplessly. That's right. Compared to the entire hunting division, Yang Tian wasn't that important. If a clan was compared to a person, then the hunting department would be a knife, a pair of eyes and ears in that person's hand. The conversation between the two was very short and ended very quickly. At this time, Yang Tian was in a dark room of the hunting division. This was a specially made secret chamber. The room was completely sealed off. There was not a single bit of light, nor was there enough oxygen. It was so dark that one could not even see one's fingers or hear any sounds coming from the outside. The sound inside could not be transmitted to the outside. It was like confinement. That was one of the rules of the hunting division. Newcomers to the hunting division would be locked up in a small dark room for a week to 10 days. At this moment, Yang Tian was sitting cross-legged in the dark room. The little blue dragon wasn't with Yang Tian at this time. Instead, it stayed outside the house and waited quietly. This room was squarish in shape, like a pile of bluestone. There were runes carved on the bluestone, isolating it from light and sound. Not only that, but this kind of talisman array would also disturb the cultivator's cultivation. In other words, the cultivators who were locked inside could only wait quietly. They couldn't use cultivation methods to pass the time. This stage was a test of patience and perseverance. If a normal person was locked in a room like this, they would have a mental breakdown in less than a week. Cultivators had great endurance, but they could only last for about 10 days. After the three elders finished their conversation with Hueha Baixing, they changed into a set of black armor and a black helmet and came to the front of the stone house. The four masked men in black armor standing guard outside the stone house bowed to the three elders. "After 15 days, let him out," the three elders said calmly. The four guards didn't say anything and only nodded. Not only would the three elders not give Yang Tian any special treatment, they would also make Yang Tian undergo an even harsher test. After giving the orders, the three elders turned around and left. During this process, when the three elders spoke, their voices were different from usual, making it impossible for others to determine their identities based on their voices. Although there was a thick stone wall and rune energy between them, the little blue dragon could sense that Yang Tian was safe. Although 2 days had passed, he was very calm. Being locked in a dark room like this might be a test for other cultivators, but it was nothing to Yang Tian. Yang Tian, who was sitting cross-legged in the dark room, was cultivating his spiritual energy. Spiritual energy was not affected by rune energy. As long as he could cultivate, not to mention 15 days, even if it was 150 days, Yang Tian could endure it. Moreover, Yang Tian could use his spiritual energy to observe the situation outside. 15 days passed very quickly as Yang Tian cultivated in peace. When the time was up, the guards activated the rune mechanism and opened the door. Yang Tian narrowed his eyes and walked out of the special stone room. He had been in a space without light for a long time, so he was not used to the light outside. "Congratulations, you passed. You have passed the test." Seeing Yang Tian's calm expression and stable aura, one of the guards lightly said to Yang Tian, "Thank you." Yang Tian smiled. A green shadow flashed, and the little blue dragon landed on Yang Tian's shoulder. The hunting division was very big, and Yang Tian was given an independent room. In fact, everyone in the runes division had their own residence. This was because everyone in the hunting division had their own secret. Apart from that, Yang Tian was also given a set of black armor. According to the rules, Yang Tian had to wear armor whenever he went out, except in his own room. Although the little blue dragon was by his side, and even if he was covered in armor, others would still recognize him. However, rules were rules, and they could not be violated. Although there were many people in the hunting division, it was usually very quiet. Yang Tian liked this kind of environment very much. He was not a lively person, and since he could not trust anyone here, he did not want to make any friends. Even if they were in the same hunting division, there were countless cases of people being betrayed by their friends in the history of countless families. Karcha had already warned Yang Tian about this. After waiting for 3 days in the hunting division, the head manager gathered all the people in the hunting division in a hall. Usually, there were not many people, but there were more than 1,000 hunting division members gathered in the hall. The head manager was wearing a full set of black armor and a helmet with a mask on his head. He sat on a high seat in the hall. "Everyone, we have a mission," the third elder, who was fully covered in black armor, said faintly as he glanced at his subordinates. The hall was very quiet, and one could hear a pin drop. After the third elder finished speaking, he pressed on the armrest of his seat. Then, a map was projected from the top of the hall. This kind of display made use of runes, but the effect was similar to that of an electronic device. Everyone could clearly see the situation on the map. The third elder said faintly, "This is the central area of the Yen domain, known as the Myriad Beast Lair. According to reliable information, a strange beast that came from the Star Ocean to the Yen domain has entered the Myriad Beast Lair. The 3 shrines of the Cloud domain had issued an order. Whoever could figure out the information about this strange beast, or even kill it and bring back its corpse, would be given a set of Destiny Comprehension Realm Pill formulas. This is something that our family must fight for. Whoever can do it will be rewarded with a Fate Comprehending Realm Pill. I would like to remind everyone that this matter is very important. After you succeed, do not be selfish and think of going to the Cloud domain alone to exchange for the formula. You all know the consequences of doing so. I think everyone is very clear about my methods of dealing with people. This time, the competition will be very fierce, and the chances of death are very high. I hope everyone will consider it carefully." After the third elder finished speaking, the hall was still silent. After a while, someone walked in front of the third elder and took out a red bead from a jar on the third elder's table. After someone took the lead, another person walked up. Seeing this situation, Yang Tian understood that this was the way to accept this mission. A total of over 100 people walked up and took out the red bead from the jar. When no one went up, Yang Tian walked out of the crowd and walked up the stone steps to the headmaster's table. "Yang Tian, are you sure you want to participate?" Yang Tian had just stretched out his hand when the headmaster said indifferently. The little blue dragon was lying on Yang Tian's shoulder. Everyone knew Yang Tian's identity. Yang Tian's right hand stopped at the mouth of the jar as he glanced at the headmaster. Although there was a mask between them, Yang Tian could feel the headmaster's cold gaze. Yang Tian was only stunned for a moment. He didn't answer the headmaster's words and put his hand into the jar. He used his actions to answer the headmaster's words. But to Yang Tian's surprise, the jar was empty. At this time, Yang Tian remembered that there were 109 people who came up and took a red bead each. In other words, there were only 109 of these red beads. Seeing that Yang Tian's hand was empty, the headmaster said, "Unfortunately, there's no more. You still haven't answered my question." Yang Tian replied, "I'm sure. I must participate." The headmaster stretched out his left hand and placed it on the table. When he slowly retracted his hand, he saw a red bead on the table. Yang Tian reached out like lightning and grabbed the red bead in his hand. As soon as the bead was in his hand, the strange program told Yang Tian that this bead was a type of talisman treasure and had a positioning function. After obtaining the red bead, Yang Tian walked down the stage and returned to his original position. The headmaster said, Some of the people who have just joined the hunting division might not understand the use of this item. Let me repeat myself. After you obtain this item, you must not be more than 2 steps away from your position. Otherwise, it will explode. The resulting power is enough to blow your body to pieces. Also, it has a positioning function. As long as you carry it with you, I will be able to clearly sense your position. This was within Yang Tian's expectations. Since he couldn't guarantee the loyalty of the members, he had to use special methods to control them. The strange program then told Yang Tian that the red bead had spatial talisman energy, life talisman energy. There were more than 10 different talisman arrays on the small bead. This reminded Yang Tian of the collar he wore in the mine. This was one of the methods his clan used to control him. Can it be cracked? Yang Tian asked the strange program in his mind after the headmaster finished speaking. The program said, "It will take some time." This answer made Yang Tian relax. He hated being controlled by others. The headmaster waved his hand. The members who didn't accept the mission left through the 2 small doors of the main hall. Including Yang Tian, 110 people who had accepted the mission remained. Yang Tian discovered that the people who had accepted the mission were all cultivators at the illusion realm or above. From low to high, they were divided into impulse, returnance, illusion realm, destiny comprehension, 100 changes, and astral wander. Yang Tian was currently at late returnance. As long as he broke through to returnance, Yang Tian would reach the peak of the illusion realm. The hallmark of the illusion realm was the formation of an energy world in the body. Yang Tian's body already had the origin realm. After the illusion realm was the destiny comprehension realm. Destiny comprehension was comprehending the mysteries of life, turning the energy world into a complete universe where life could exist. This was just too strange. Yang Tian couldn't imagine what it would be like to give birth to life in his energy world. Perhaps the destiny comprehension realm that he imagined was actually different from the reality. While Yang Tian was observing the others and pondering about his cultivation realm, several masked women in black walked out of the hall. Each of these women held a plate in their hands. There was a flat blue stone on the plate. The blue stones were of different sizes and were arranged on the plate. At this time, the great manager sitting at the top said, "Everyone, the beautiful woman has been prepared for you. Everyone, enjoy yourselves. Perhaps you won't have the chance to come back alive." With that, the headmaster stood up and left the main hall. Only then did Yang Tian understand that this was flipping plate. After the headmaster left, someone finally spoke. When the woman in black handed the plate to a person, the person waved his hand and said, "I have a home." The woman in black walked to the next person without saying a word. The next person didn't refuse. He casually took a piece from the plate and flipped the blue stone over. There was a number written on it. This should be a special address number. Some took the blue stone, some didn't. Of course, Yang Tian didn't take it. The few women in black quickly left. The people who stayed behind quickly dispersed. This matter made Yang Tian very curious. He stopped a person who didn't flip the stone plate and asked, "Excuse me, what is this?" This person glanced at Yang Tian and said indifferently, "They are all beautiful young women who have never been touched by men. Many of us die when we go on missions. Many of the people who die don't have relatives. These women use their bodies in exchange for the property left behind after we die. If the property is rich enough, they might leave us a descendant." After this person finished speaking, he walked around Yang Tian and left. Yang Tian finally understood. He couldn't help but feel a trace of sadness in his heart. After shaking his head, Yang Tian quickly walked out of the main hall. The mission had been accepted. Yang Tian returned to his room and waited for the departure notice. Chapter 662. 3 days later. 110 people, including Yang Tian, who participated in the hunting mission, left the underground city through the teleportation disc. There was already a black spaceship parked outside. In reality, spaceships were aircraft that could fly in the universe. However, such aircraft could not leave the space constraints of this continent. In Yang Tian's opinion, it was not a real spaceship. What was different from a planet's environment was the gravitational force of this continent. The higher one went, the stronger the gravitational force. This black spaceship was more than 100 meters long and more than 40 meters wide. Its head was oval and there was a dock under its abdomen. On both sides of the spaceship, there were 4 propulsion devices that used rune energy. 110 people had already put on their black armor and gathered beside the spaceship. After confirming their identities, a manager ordered them to board the spaceship. The spaceship's interior was very spacious and could accommodate hundreds of people. After entering the cabin, Yang Tian was surprised to find that the head manager of the hunting division was also there. He sat on the seat near the front of the spaceship. The 110 people who came in sat on both sides of the spaceship. A series of rumbling sounds could be heard as the spaceship quickly left the ground and flew towards a certain direction at high speed. Although the head manager had shown them the map and the lair of beasts was in the middle of the Yen domain, the Yen domain was very big. Without detailed coordinates, it would be very difficult to find the lair of beasts in a short time. A few minutes after the spaceship took off, it began to fly steadily. Transparent windows opened on both sides of the spaceship, and they could see the situation outside. When Yang Tian saw the situation outside, he was very surprised, because this spaceship was actually escorted by a spaceship. It was obvious that the spaceship guarding this spaceship belonged to the machine race. These spaceships from the automaton race were smaller in size. During battle, not only could they fight in the air, but they could also transform into human and beast forms. Like transformers, they could fight on the ground. Yang Tian looked outside and turned back to look at the head manager. Other than Yang Tian, everyone else did the same. It seemed that this situation rarely happened. The head manager could sense everyone's doubts and said lightly, "This time, we will be attacked by many exotic beasts on the way to the lair of beasts. Therefore, the families have joined forces and paid a price to have the automaton race escort us. If that's the case, why didn't the temple let the automaton race investigate? If they want to do this, it should be very easy, right?" Someone asked after the head manager finished speaking. The great manager said, "The temple does not allow the mechs to participate in such matters." Yang Tian suddenly understood that this was to suppress the development of the machinery race, but sometimes they had no choice but to rely on the help of the machinery race. It was estimated that as long as humans could use runes like electronic technology, the existence of the machinery race would be meaningless. Humans would not hesitate to destroy the machinery race. Thinking of this, Yang Tian could not help but be startled. He suspected that the disappearance of the Talisman Master had something to do with the machinery race. This was because once the Talisman Master came to this world, it would be a disaster for the machine race. There was a reason for every living thing to exist in this world. Humans were the masters of this world. Humans would allow the races that were beneficial to humans to survive and develop. As for the races that were unfavorable to the human race, they could only fight against the human race and survive until they were no longer a match for the human race. No matter which world it was, such competition existed. This spaceship that was powered by rune energy flew very quickly. A few minutes later, another family's spaceship joined the team. A few more minutes later, another family's spaceship joined the team. Dozens of families' spaceships, under the escort of the machinery race, flew rapidly for more than 10 hours before stopping. Yang Tian kept looking out of the window. In the beginning, the terrain below was a small forest and small mountains. Later on, the terrain became more and more complex, with continuous high mountains and forests that stretched as far as the eye could see. The forests disappeared. After passing through the continuous mountains, there was a desert. After that, there was a grassland. After the grassland, there was a tall mountain range in the distance. At the edge of the grassland, the spaceship slowed down and landed steadily. Although the spaceship stopped, the cabin door did not open immediately. The head manager glanced at everyone and pressed on the armrest of the seat. A blue ray of light shot down from the cabin roof. There was a red dot in the light. The head manager said, "The life pearl that you carry with you has a rune array on it that can transmit your life information. If you die, the red dot that represents you will disappear. Through the life pearl, I can also know your location. This mission is very important to each family. Stay away from others. Also, be careful of the mutated beast. This is the center of the Yen domain, far away from human settlement. Although the beast tide has just passed, there are still many mutated beasts." After the head manager finished speaking, the cabin door of the spaceship opened. 110 people walked out of the spaceship one after another. The spaceship was protected by a rune array. Inside, they did not feel anything. However, once they walked out of the area covered by the rune array, Yang Tian suddenly realized that the gravity here was much stronger. The temperature was also very high. The air pressure was very strong. Suddenly coming here would make it difficult for people to breathe. Dozens of families. Each family sent dozens to hundreds of hunters. In an instant, thousands of people had gathered in this place. The people from the Kita family were the first to get off the spaceship. They walked towards the mountain range that looked like a high wall. The identities of the people from the hunting division were kept secret. Normally, they did not know each other. After getting off the spaceship, they did not gather to talk. The thousands of people were all passers-by. Yang Tian looked at the mountain range in the distance and walked towards it. At this moment, he could see that the armors of each family were different. The people from the Hui family were wearing black armors. The other families had red armors, white armors, yellow armors. At a glance, it was almost impossible to see two families with the same armors. Even if the armors looked the same, the colors would be different. Other than distinguishing the families from the colors, one could also distinguish them from the insignia on the armors. The Hui family's insignia was really ugly to Yang Tian's standards. It was diamond-shaped, with an unknown beast's head in the middle and the words Hui on it. After the members of the hunting division had left, the spaceships of each family were guarded by the automaton race. They did not leave. These spaceships had to wait for news of their return. In the Hui family's spaceship, after Yang Tian and the rest left, the cabin door closed. The head manager walked into the cabin behind his seat. Compared to the cabin outside, this cabin was extremely luxurious. In this cabin, the patriarch of the Hui family, Hui Baixing, Hui Miao Miao, and Hui Chan Chan were all present. Head manager, why didn't you send the strongest person in the family? Wouldn't that increase the chances of success? After the head manager walked into the cabin and closed the cabin door, Hui Chan Chan asked curiously. The head manager said, "That would alarm the strong mutated beasts. High-level mutated beasts are also very arrogant. The stronger the person, the more attention they will attract. Furthermore, the main mission this time is to investigate." "I see." Hui Chan Chan was enlightened. Chapter 663. Were there no experts? Only Hueha Baixing and the head manager knew that more than 10 experts from the clan were sent this time, and they were all Destiny Enlightenment experts. On the surface, it was just an investigation, but the higher-ups like Hueha Baixing and the chief manager understood that the mission this time was to do everything they could to kill the exotic beast that had come from the Sea of Stars. It was said that the mutated beast had been injured by the goddess. If they could obtain the life crystal in its body, they might be able to break through to the soul travel realm. The 3 temples had sent out the order, but the temples would definitely send experts. Sending out the order was just a smokescreen. Getting the families to send people to scout was equivalent to opening up a path for the people from the temples. Although they knew that, the families still sent people. If they sent people, they might have a chance to fight for the mutated beast. If they did not, they would have no chance at all. The mutated beast that came to the Star Ocean had great research value even if they only obtained a part of its body. The further they walked, the higher the mountains were. Yang Tian did not walk very quickly. The little blue dragon told him that there were many scents of mutated beasts in the air. As expected, after walking for tens of kilometers and almost reaching the foot of the mountain, a rumbling sound came from the mountain peak that was thousands of meters tall. The ground under Yang Tian's feet shook slightly. Then, a large number of flying mutated beasts rose from the forest on the mountainside. Some of the mutated beasts flew around in panic, while some flew above the forest and dove down. Clearly, someone had come into contact with the mutated beast. Yang Tian frowned and stopped walking. He sat behind a dark red rock. Thousand Beast Lair. Just by hearing the name, one could tell that there were many mutated beasts in this place. If one tried to force their way through, it was basically impossible to reach the destination in a short time. After all, this was a scouting mission, as Yang Tian was thinking. He suddenly smelled a familiar fragrance. Women naturally liked fragrant things. Although Hueha Miao Miao had not used any perfume for 3 days for this trip, Yang Tian still smelled it. Just as Yang Tian raised his head, a black shadow flashed and a woman in black armor appeared in front of him. Even though Hui Miao Miao was wearing a helmet, Yang Tian knew that it was her. It was also very easy to find Yang Tian, because the little blue dragon was lying on Yang Tian's shoulder. Yang Tian was staring at Hui Miao Miao when suddenly, a young girl's laughter came from the side. Who would have thought that Hui Chan would come as well? Brother-in-law, you have to bring me along this time. Hui Chan appeared in front of Yang Tian in a flash and said with a smile. Hui Chan was also a cultivator. She was at the peak of impulse and would reach returnance very soon. Hui Miao Miao's cultivation level was even higher than Yang Tian's. She was at the middle stage of the illusion realm. Why did you bring her here? Yang Tian looked at Hui Chan and asked Hui Miao Miao. Hui Miao Miao did not answer, but Hui Chan answered. Brother agreed. He said that after this trial, I'll have a better chance at becoming a deacon of the Divine Hall. Isn't your brother afraid that something will happen to you and you won't be able to return? Yang Tian asked. Yang Tian asked Hui Chan, but the one who answered Yang Tian was Hui Miao Miao. She said, she's a member of the Hui clan, so she obviously has to go through countless trials of life and death. The moment Hui Miao Miao said that, Hui Chan added, Don't worry. I won't be in danger. Haven't you noticed that we're following behind them? With that, Hui Chan suddenly thought of something and asked Yang Tian, why are you still here? They've all gone to the front. Yang Tian smiled. There's no rush. Just as Yang Tian finished speaking, they heard a beast roar coming from the mountainside. Hearing the beast roar, the little blue dragon's eyes were filled with intense battle intent. Xiao Long, go and see where we can avoid the mutated beasts so that we can pass through smoothly. The little blue dragon nodded and disappeared in a flash from Yang Tian's sight. During this period of time, Yang Tian had given all the life crystals that he had left to the little blue dragon. As a result, the little blue dragon's body was filled with energy. Yang Tian, you're so smart. Seeing that the little blue dragon had disappeared, Hui Chan praised Yang Tian. Xiao Long is also a mutated beast. It's small, so it won't attract the attention of other mutated beasts. As long as it's around, you'll know in advance which mutated beasts are nearby. Then you can go over quietly. After Hui Chan finished speaking, Yang Tian smiled and nodded. This girl was really too smart. Outside this continent was an endless sea of stars. It could be said that the entire continent was surrounded by the sea of stars. From Yang Tian's point of view, he had come from one world to another. However, in reality they were in the same world. After Qin Fei came to this world, she quickly understood this. After coming to this world, she quickly woke up. She had been summoned by the superstar god temple, and the god's consciousness that had entered her body had already dissipated. Even a god could not truly come back to life after death. Qin Fei knew that Yang Tian would come to this world to look for her. She used up the enormous amount of energy stored in her body and crossed the sea of stars. From the continent where she was, she came to the continent where Yang Tian was. The price of a round trip caused Qin Fei to lose her godhead. The bright red godhead mark between her eyebrows had disappeared. Without her godhead, she was a lowly god's servant. Over the course of countless years, many gods had fallen in this manner. There were many ways to lose one's godhead. However, most of them were due to cultivation accidents or being robbed by other gods. It was the first time in this divine realm that someone like Qin Fei, who had used her godhead as the price, had left behind 5 words. It was worth mentioning that gods were also divided into ranks in this divine realm. Qin Fei had benefited from the consciousness and energy of the previous female god. Her status was at least that of a mid-level god. However, now, she had fallen to become a servant of a god. Guanyin, what are you doing? Was he imagining things again? Tai Yen is about to fall from the sky. Have you not cleaned up the myriad of worlds created in this space? Qin Fei was holding something that looked like a tennis racket. Just as she was thinking about Yang Tian, a dignified voice suddenly sounded in her ears. Guanyin was the name that Qin Fei had given herself after coming here. I'll be done soon, Qin Fei hurriedly replied. Then, she waved the strange magic tool in her hand and scattered the black bubbles that had appeared in front of her. The place where Qin Fei was now was a circular platform. In the sky, there was a large funnel-shaped colorful cloud. This colorful cloud extended into the sky and covered a large part of it. The black bubbles that Qin Fei had scattered were created at the bottom of this funnel. The bubbles that were created had 2 colors, one black and one white. The black bubbles had to be scattered because it was the realm of death, while the white bubbles were the realm of life. In this realm of life, there was a huge amount of energy that gods could consume to replenish their energy. In the realm of death, there would be life forms that even gods could not control. These fist-sized bubbles were, in fact, universes. They were called myriad worlds by the gods. Chapter 664. In the Divine Dominion, the Tai Yen in the sky was actually a special giant artificial star. It was said that countless gods worked together and used rune energy to create it to provide light and heat to this world. Tai Yen quickly moved to the edge of the sky, and the light of the entire world gradually dimmed. At this time, the creation of worlds finally slowed down and finally stopped. Qin Fei's work for the day was over. The black worlds were scattered by Qin Fei with a magic weapon in her hand, turning into energy. The white worlds floated into the distance and scattered around the platform. This pillar-shaped platform was also known as the Sky Pillar. When night fell, the divine servants with wings in each temple would fly out of their respective temples, carrying basket-like tools to collect the white worlds. Then, they would send them back to the temple to be refined into special energy for the gods in the temple to absorb. When the worlds stopped appearing, Qin Fei lifted her skirt and walked down the stone steps of the Sky Pillar. There were thousands of steps. With Qin Fei's speed, it would take her half a day to walk down. Of course, this half a day was Earth's time. Qin Fei came from Earth, and like Yang Tian, she liked to use Earth's time unit to measure the length of time. If she used Earth's time to calculate, every day and night in the Divine Dominion was equivalent to 7 or 8 days on Earth. After working for a long time, Qin Fei was very tired and wanted to return to her residence to rest as soon as possible. The Sky Pillar was very tall and huge, and there was more than one of them. They were like pillars that supported the sky, standing between heaven and earth. It was a great wonder in the Divine Dominion. The temples of the various gods were scattered around these sky pillars, so that they could collect the white worlds. The steps spiraled around the cylindrical sky pillar. Before Qin Fei walked halfway, she heard laughter coming from the side. Tai Yen fell, and the white worlds descended around this huge sky pillar. Countless winged servants of the goddess happily flew around the sky pillar, collecting the white worlds. The baskets in their hands were filled with fist-sized, bubble-like worlds. Seeing this scene, Qin Fei couldn't help but stop. She felt that this scene was very beautiful. Qin Fei used to fly to the roof of her divine palace every time this happened, and she would admire all of this. The energy extracted from the myriad white realms could protect the body of a god from the invasion of time, but the soul would also dissipate. In other words, the gods in this divine realm were not immortal. It was just that they lived for a long time, so long that they could not even remember how long they had lived. After death, the bodies of the gods would not decay, and the remains left behind would be transported to the tomb of the gods. Many gods didn't want to die, so before they died, they scattered their consciousness, descended into another world, and fell into a deep sleep. The great priests of the superstar divine temple had summoned the consciousness of this kind of god, causing Qin Fei to temporarily lose her memories and obtain powerful abilities. However, after returning to the god realm, the god's consciousness that was entrusted to Qin Fei immediately dissipated. Even so, the godhead remained in Qin Fei's body. This was an extremely rare occurrence. In the history of God's domain, there were very few such records. In the eyes of the other gods, Qin Fei was a fake god, but her power was so great that the divine realm had to assign her a divine palace and servants. However, it was not long before Qin Fei sought her own death. She used up her powerful energy to cross the sea of stars, and when she returned, she quickly lost her godhead. A god without a godhead would be demoted to a low-level servant, and their status was even lower than normal servants. Look, isn't that Guanyin? A fake god will always be a fake god. She will never become a real god. When I saw how proud she was that day, I was so envious. I didn't think that she would end up like this. The laughter of the maids entered Qin Fei's ears. If it were any other servants that had lost their godhead, they would be enraged. However, Qin Fei was very calm. She did not want to come to this world. It was a cold world, and it made her feel very lonely. If it were not for the fact that the energy in her body was greatly damaged, and she needed to return to this world to heal, Qin Fei would not have come back. Slap! Qin Fei stopped for a moment, and then she continued to walk down. Suddenly, a white infinite worlds hit her on the face. The infinite worlds were very sturdy like rock. Naturally, they would not break. Qin Fei turned around after being hit. The one that used the infinite worlds to hit her was a servant that looked to be around 7 or 8 years old. When the little girl saw that she had hit Qin Fei, she clapped her hands and laughed. She was very happy and she even yelled, "I hit her! I hit her!" The little girl's naughty and cute look made the servants of the goddess around her giggle. With one little girl doing that, the other little girls also joined in, and they all threw infinite worlds the size of a fist at Qin Fei. Qin Fei could only use her hands to protect her head and quicken her step. Suddenly, Qin Fei let out a loud cry and fell down. The stairs of the sky pillar were steep. As soon as she fell, Qin Fei could not control her body and kept rolling down. At first, Qin Fei did not suffer much damage, and she could only let out a groan. But later, as her body and head hit the stone steps, she fainted. At this time, none of the servants of the goddess went to save Qin Fei. In their minds there was no such thing as sympathy. A few minutes later, Qin Fei's body finally stopped at the corner of the stone step. At this time, her breath was very weak. The two servants of the goddess felt that something was not right. They quickly flapped their colorful wings and came over to take a look. "She is not dead yet, but she is not far from death. What should we do? Let's just say that she accidentally missed a step and fell down. That is the only way. Otherwise we will be punished." After the two servants of the goddess discussed for a while, One of them went back to report to their master, while the other went to discuss with her companions nearby. What happened next was beyond the expectations of the servants of the goddess. They felt that they had been worried for nothing. A temple manager that came to deal with this matter only took one look at Qin Fei, and then he ordered the 2 servants of the goddess to send Qin Fei to the tomb of the gods. Qin Fei was not dead yet. As long as one of the gods treated her, she would be able to recover. But none of the gods were willing to do so. In the eyes of the gods, the lives of the servants of the gods were not as important as an infinite worlds. The entrance to the tomb of the gods was actually a huge teleportation formation. It had not been opened for a long time. Qin Fei was placed on the teleportation formation by the 2 servants of the gods. With a flash of colorful light, Qin Fei disappeared from the teleportation formation. Being sent to the tomb of the gods was not something that the servants of the gods could enjoy. The reason why Qin Fei could enjoy such treatment was because she was once a god. Chapter 665. At the center of the Yen region, under a tall mountain outside the lair of thousand beasts, the little blue dragon finally returned after about half an hour. The little blue dragon let out an excited cry. It told Yang Tian that it had found the route and guaranteed that they could pass through this mountain quickly. "Let's go," Yang Tian said to Hui Miao Miao and Hui Chan Chan after looking at the mountain in front of them. Ugh! Just as he stood up, Yang Tian clutched his chest and let out a muffled groan. "What's wrong?" Seeing that Yang Tian seemed to be injured, Hui Miao Miao pulled on Yang Tian's arm and asked worriedly. After having a relationship with Yang Tian, Hui Miao Miao also started to care about Yang Tian. Yang Tian closed his eyes and sensed carefully. He gritted his teeth and said, "I suddenly feel very uncomfortable. It's like I'm about to lose something important." "What did you lose?" Hui Chan Chan asked curiously. Yang Tian said, "To me, it's something as precious as my life. Let me think." Yang Tian's sixth sense was very sharp. It had been proven countless times that his intuition was never wrong. "It's definitely not something, it's a person. Father, mother, no. Xiao Fei." When Yang Tian thought of Qin Fei, the gloominess that suddenly appeared in his heart dissipated by quite a bit. Could something have happened to Xiao Fei? Yang Tian guessed in his heart. However, he wasn't very sure. With Yang Tian's current realm and strength, it was impossible for him to cross the Sea of Stars and go to the Divine Region to look for Qin Fei. "Let's go." Yang Tian thought for a while and said with gritted teeth. Although he looked calm on the surface, Yang Tian was extremely anxious. He once again felt how insignificant he was. He swore in his heart that he had to increase his realm as soon as possible. With the little blue dragon leading the way, Yang Tian, Hui Miao Miao, and Hui Chan Chan traveled through the forest. They didn't encounter a single mutated beast until they were halfway up the mountain. The path ahead was full of twists and turns. The little blue dragon was always able to detect the presence of exotic beasts in advance, and then led Yang Tian and the others around them. This was the outskirts of the nest of myriad beasts. Although there were many exotic beasts, there were no returnants beasts. To the cultivators who came here, killing these strange beasts was simply a waste of energy. With the little blue dragon leading the way, Yang Tian and the others were naturally much faster than the others. Yang Tian and the others continued to advance, while the others were blocked by a large number of exotic beasts. They had no choice but to get rid of the exotic beasts blocking their way before they could proceed. Yang Tian had to thank these people as well, because they had attracted a large number of exotic beasts in the surroundings. On the Hui clan spaceship, Hui Baixing saw the red dots representing Yang Tian, Hui Miao Miao, and Hui Chan Chan surpass most people very quickly. He was extremely surprised. "This kid is pretty good. No wonder you like him so much." The third elder, who was in charge of the hunting department, took off his helmet and said nonchalantly when no one was around. Hui Baisheng smiled, of course. I believe in my own eyes. The third elder only smiled. It was impossible to tell what he meant from his smile. Very soon, Yang Tian, Hui Miao Miao, and the dragon arrived at the top of the mountain. Yang Tian leaped onto a large tree and chopped a snake-like low-level ultra beast into two. He stood on the tree branch and looked into the distance. What entered his eyes was a large valley shrouded in white mist. It seemed like the path ahead was even more dangerous. The mountains were tall and the forest was dense. After passing through the valley, they still had to pass through several mountains. While looking ahead, the strange program told Yang Tian that there was a strong magnetic field around them that could interfere with electronic devices. The further they went, the stronger the magnetic field. At this time, Yang Tian finally understood why the automatons stayed outside. Even if the temple allowed the automatons to enter, the automatons would not be willing. The strong magnetic field ahead was a forbidden zone for the automatons. This was also one of the automatons' biggest weaknesses. After walking for a long time, they were tired. Yang Tian took out the food and water that he had prepared beforehand from his storage bracelet and began to eat. Naturally, Hui Miao Miao and Hui Chan Chan had prepared food as well. After the three of them and the dragon had their fill, they continued on their way. Previously, they were going up the mountain. Now, they were going down the mountain. Compared to before, the terrain was much more complicated. Before they set off, the little blue dragon also left for a while to check out the terrain ahead. Roar. Before they set off, there was a beast's roar not far behind them. Next, there were sounds of humans and beasts killing each other. Let's go, Yang Tian said calmly as he turned around and looked in the direction of the roar. At this time, many of the top elites had already passed through the mountain and entered the valley ahead. These people were very agile and could not be discovered by normal low-rank beasts. Therefore, there was not much movement in the valley that was shrouded in mist. The little blue dragon had already found the way down the mountain. About half an hour later, Yang Tian and the others had reached the bottom of the valley. The forest was shrouded in mist, and the visibility was less than 10 meters. There was a thick smell of rotting wood in the air. Ah! Suddenly, Hui and Chan Chan screamed and jumped up high. Next, there was a flash of green. The little blue dragon flew past where Hui Chan Chan was standing and killed a large red insect that was poking its head out from the withered leaves on the ground. This insect was as thick as a human's arm and looked like a centipede. It was able to create a strong psychological impact on a girl. When Hui Chan Chan screamed, she tried to suppress her voice so that it would not be as sharp as usual. Thank you, Xiao Long. Seeing that the little blue dragon had helped her vent her anger, Hui Chan Chan patted her chest and thanked the little blue dragon. The little blue dragon raised its head proudly and landed on Yang Tian's shoulder. These insects were low-rank beasts. Although the little blue dragon had noticed them, it did not alert Yang Tian. The three of them continued forward for a while. Suddenly, there was a rustling sound around them. Yang Tian, who was in the lead, immediately stopped. There are so many insects. After looking around, Hui Chan Chan pulled on her sister's arm and said with fear in her eyes. In a forest like this, there were not only beasts but also dangerous insects. While these insects were small, there were many of them. If they were trapped by them, it would be very troublesome. Let's go. Yang Tian looked around and saw the red insects that were killed by the little blue dragon crawling out from the ground. With that, Yang Tian grabbed Hui Chan Chan's arm and quickly ran forward. In a situation like this, it was hard to determine the direction. Yang Tian tried his best to make himself go straight. Buzz, buzz, buzz. In less than 100 meters, there was a buzzing sound around them. It was like the sound of a large number of bees flying. The red insects on the ground could fly. Chapter 666. The white fog around them suddenly turned red and was filled with insects. Judging by the buzzing sound, the number of insects was increasing at an exponential rate. The buzzing sound was getting louder, and it was unavoidable for them to feel annoyed. Huey and Chan were afraid of insects. When they saw so many insects, they immediately hid between Huey Meow Meow and Yang Tian. Huey Meow Meow also frowned and looked very serious. Yang Tian could not be bothered to hide at this moment. He unleashed his spiritual power and formed a spiritual energy shield around the three of them. Puff, puff, puff. The rapidly flying insects quickly attacked Yang Tian and the rest. Countless insects crashed into Yang Tian's spiritual energy shield. What shocked Huey Meow Meow was that these insects seemed to have crashed into an invisible wall. After they bounced off, they fell directly to the ground. After they landed on the ground, they did not move at all. It was obvious that they were dead. This was because Yang Tian had used the force in this layer of spiritual power. These low-level insects could not resist the destruction of their bodies by the force. They died upon contact. Every red insect was about as thick as an adult's arm. They were about 1 meter long and looked like centipede. They could fly, but they did not have wings on their back. They probably relied on an organ on the surface of their bodies that could vibrate the air to fly. When these insects touched the spiritual energy shield, Yang Tian saw these insects spit out a soft needle-like organ from their mouth. The tip could open and become a suction cup. If these insects landed on one's body, one would probably be sucked dry in no time. Amidst the puff, puff, puff sounds, Yang Tian's spiritual power was depleted at an extremely fast speed. Although these insects died in large numbers, they were not afraid of death. After one died, another one pounced on them. Soon, a large number of dead insects were piled up around Yang Tian and the rest. If this continued, the three of them would be buried by the insects' corpses. It only took a little more than a minute. The little blue dragon knew that Yang Tian couldn't hold on for much longer. Suddenly, it jumped off Yang Tian's shoulder and rushed out. The little blue dragon flew more than 100 meters into the air. It flew 2 circles in the air and turned into a giant dragon. Looking down from above, with Yang Tian and the other two as the center, the area of several hundred meters around them was densely packed with red insects. There were a lot of them. From the looks of it, all the bugs in the area had gathered here. This was perfect. He could catch them all in one fell swoop. Roar! The little blue dragon let out a low howl. This cry reminded Yang Tian to be prepared. Next, the little blue dragon would use fire to attack. This was the best way to deal with these insects. After Yang Tian heard the little blue dragon's cry, he raised his head and looked at the sky. The dense swarm of insects had completely covered the sky above them. Because of this, the curious Huey Chan could not see how majestic the little blue dragon would be after transforming into a giant dragon. Huey Meow Meow had seen the little blue dragon after transforming. Gritting his teeth, Yang Tian opened his eyes and unleashed his most powerful spiritual power. Boom! At the same time, the little blue dragon in the sky opened its mouth and spat out a golden dragon flame. Under the little blue dragon's control, the dragon flame spread out dozens of meters above Yang Tian and the others and spread out. Very quickly, the dragon flame had covered an area of several hundred meters. Naturally, Yang Tian and the others were within the range of the dragon flame. However, the extremely high temperature was blocked by Yang Tian's spiritual power. In the eyes of Huey Meow Meow and Huey Chan, they were surrounded by golden flames. As soon as the red insects touched the flames, they immediately turned into black powder. It was as if their bodies were made out of red paper. The same went for the trees around them. They were instantly carbonized. The withered leaves on the ground were also quickly burned and turned into black powder in the blink of an eye. The wet ground was instantly dyed red. Seeing what was happening, the two sisters could not help but widen their eyes. They did not expect the little blue dragon's flames to be so hot. The dragon flame did not last for long. When Yang Tian could not hold on any longer, the dragon flame finally disappeared. With Yang Tian and the others as the center, the area of several hundred meters had been turned into scorched earth. It was pitch black. Most of the red insects had been burned to death and turned into black powder. The air was filled with a burnt smell. Ah, it's so hot! When Yang Tian withdrew his spiritual power, Huey Chanchan could not help but scream. In a flash, the little blue dragon returned to Yang Tian's shoulder. The little blue dragon had used up a lot of energy when it spat out the dragon flame just now. There shouldn't be any more insects around here. Let's go. Yang Tian glanced around and said plainly. The three of them quickly left the area that was burned black by the little blue dragon. After the dragon flame passed, the scorching air spread in all directions. After walking for a long distance, Yang Tian felt that the surrounding temperature had returned to normal. There were no traces of exotic beasts in the valley. The exotic beasts were probably afraid of the insects. After the little blue dragon burned everything, the valley was no longer dangerous. Yang Tian and the others quickly passed through the valley. Under the guidance of the little blue dragon, they went over a small mountain. With the lesson from last time, Yang Tian and the others moved along the side of the mountain ridge. The smart little blue dragon released a powerful aura at that moment, deterring the exotic beasts around it. Sensing the little blue dragon's aura and the fact that it was of the same species, the exotic beasts nearby all stayed far away. As they kept moving forward, the trees on the mountain gradually became sparse and became bare hills. When Yang Tian and the others climbed to the top of another mountain and looked ahead, their eyes widened at the same time. The mountain range under their feet was ring-shaped. Together with the plains in the middle, it formed a huge basin. This basin was the lair of myriad beasts. In this basin, there were skeletons and broken bones of exotic beasts everywhere. Some of the skeletons were many times larger than the skeletons of dinosaurs. Even from a distance, it still gave people a kind of visual shock. The ring-shaped mountain range that surrounded this place, from the bottom to the middle of the mountain, was filled with cave entrances of various sizes. That was probably how the name Lair of Myriad Beasts came about. However, Yang Tian felt that this place shouldn't be called the Lair of Myriad Beasts, but the Lair of Myriad Beasts. Yang Tian and the others looked around for a long time, but they didn't find a single living exotic beast. It was dead silent. Seeing that Yang Tian didn't speak for a long time, Huey Meow Meow turned to look at Yang Tian and asked, "Are we going down now?" Yang Tian said, "We came too early. Let's wait a little longer." After saying that, Yang Tian sat down. The little blue dragon didn't have the patience of Yang Tian and the others. After waiting for a few minutes, it greeted Yang Tian and flew down the mountain, disappearing in a flash. "Xiaolong is really powerful," Huey Meow Meow exclaimed when she saw the flash of a green shadow. Yang Tian nodded and said with a smile, "Xiaolong doesn't only know how to breathe fire. He also has many other abilities." Yang Tian. As soon as Yang Tian said that, Huey Meow Meow suddenly spoke. "What's wrong?" Yang Tian asked when he saw that Huey Meow Meow wanted to say something but stopped herself. "What power did you use just now?" Huey Meow Meow asked. She was referring to the power that Yang Tian released when they were attacked by the insect. Huey Meow Meow felt that this should be Yang Tian's secret, but she thought that she was Yang Tian's woman now, so she should be able to ask, right? There was nothing to hide, so Yang Tian answered straightforwardly, "It's mental power." Mental power. Huey Meow Meow widened her eyes when she heard those words. She was very surprised. "What's wrong?" Yang Tian asked when he saw Huey Meow Meow's expression. Nothing." Huey Meow Meow was stunned for a moment before she answered plainly. Chapter 667. If it wasn't for Huey Chanchan, Yang Tian and Huey Meow Meow would definitely feel awkward being alone together. The two of them quickly ran out of things to talk about. More than 10 minutes later, the people from the other clans arrived one after another. Some of these people came from the same direction as Yang Tian's group and appeared behind Yang Tian's group. Others appeared on the mountain ridge in the distance. Thousands of people were scattered around the large basin, and they were scattered all around. When the people behind Yang Tian's group saw Yang Tian's group, they consciously distanced themselves. They were hundreds of meters away from Yang Tian's group. After looking down, they all ran down the steep mountain slope. Should we go now? Seeing that a lot of people had gone down, Hui Chanchan had an eager expression on her face as she spoke in an excited tone. Yang Tian said, "Let's wait for a while. Let's wait for Xiaolong to come back first." Rumble. As soon as Yang Tian's voice fell, a rumbling sound came from behind him. It was obvious that a beast horde had arrived. A large number of exotic beasts shook the ground. The rocks on the mountain slope were shaken and rolled down the mountain. This mountain was bare. There were no trees to block it. The situation was clear from afar. Yang Tian stood up and looked around. He saw a large number of exotic beasts gathered at the foot of the mountain. They were like a tide, surging up the mountain peak. Beast horde. Seeing this, Hui Chanchan cried out in shock. Indeed, this could be considered a beast horde. The exotic beasts from hundreds of kilometers away had gathered. Among the beast horde, there was no lack of high-level exotic beasts with large bodies. Why are there so many exotic beasts? Hui Miao Miao frowned. Yang Tian said, "There are two possibilities. First, the leader of these exotic beasts knows that we are coming and wants to surround us and kill us all. Second, these exotic beasts are not coming for us." As soon as Yang Tian's voice fell, thick black clouds suddenly appeared in the sky and floated over at an extremely fast speed. These were not clouds, but a large number of flying exotic beasts. No matter what, we have to go down first. Yang Tian looked at the approaching black clouds and gritted his teeth. What about Xiaolong? Hui Chanchan asked. Yang Tian smiled and said, "Don't worry. No matter how far I go, Xiaolong will be able to find us." After saying that, Yang Tian ran down the mountain. Hui Miao 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 was also following closely behind Yang Tian. Although the mountain was steep, it was no different from a flat land. In less than 10 minutes to go from the top to the foot of the mountain peak. At this time, the beasts had already rushed to the top of the mountain. Was in tt. The ss the zst. The t. The cultivators who had come down first had already rushed into the cave. They were probably looking for the injured exotic beast that had come from the Sea of Stars. "There's a cave over there. Let's go in." Hui Miao Miao pointed at a cave with a diameter of more than 10 meters. Yang Tian was hesitating when the rumbling sound rang out again. This stayed on the mountain for a while before rushing down the mountain. There were many exotic beasts. If they did not find a place to hide, they would be attacked directly. Yang Tian nodded immediately. Before this arrived, the three of them had already entered the cave. The rocks that were trampled by the beasts loosened and rolled down with the beasts. Amidst the rumbling sound, it was as if a mountain flood had occurred. This situation made Yang Tian feel that this was an irresistible force. This were like a tide endless. After rushing to the foot of the mountain, their speed gradually decreased. Soon, the entire basin was filled with all kinds of exotic beasts. Yang Tian and the other two stood at the entrance of the cave and looked forward. They realized that these exotic beasts were of different species. They formed a huge circle, and there was an empty space a few kilometers in diameter in the middle. At this moment, it was not only Yang Tian and the other cultivators who came here. They were also looking at the situation. It seemed like this wasn't targeting the cultivators. Yang Tian also felt that it was very strange. Squeak, squeak, squeak. At this moment there was a cry. The little blue dragon had returned and landed on Yang Tian's shoulder. What? Yang Tian couldn't help but cry out in surprise when he heard the result of the little blue dragon's investigation. Hui Chanchan asked curiously, "Yang Tian, what did Xiaolong say?" Yang Tian didn't answer. He looked behind him. The cave was very big. It seemed to have been dug out by exotic beasts with their claws. There were many exotic beasts' bones in the cave. The deeper they went, the smaller the cave became. The caves were curved downward and they led underground. Underground, there were densely packed intersecting caves, just like a maze. Underneath the network of caves, there was a huge cave. There was a very powerful exotic beast inside. That was the result of the little blue dragon's investigation. A large number of exotic beasts had gathered here. They must have come for this powerful exotic beast. Boom! Suddenly, there was a loud explosion. In the center of the basin, the empty space that was a few kilometers in diameter suddenly exploded. Countless rocks and bones flew into the sky and scattered in the air. It was like a hailstorm, and they all fell down. When the smoke and dust dissipated, a huge tortoise appeared in the middle of the field. The exotic beasts around it panicked and kept on retreating. This tortoise was very large, and its body took up a large portion of the empty space. Its thick, green tortoise shell was covered with thick and sharp spikes. On the giant turtle's head, there were two horns that looked like those of a dragon. It had a pair of big blue eyes, and there was a light that looked down on everything. As soon as it appeared, a powerful aura was emitted from its body. Even Yang Tian could feel a sense of pressure from it. This giant turtle should be a divine beast. The divine beast black tortoise. These 4 words suddenly appeared in Yang Tian's mind. Roar! As soon as the giant tortoise appeared, a powerful exotic beast in the herd let out a roar. Even though he didn't understand the tongue of the beasts, Yang Tian could tell that it was a declaration of war. The giant turtle didn't make any sound. It slowly turned around and faced the direction where the roar came from. The exotic beasts around it were very afraid of the giant turtle. Even though their leader had given the order to fight, they didn't dare to immediately attack the giant turtle. That beast seems to be injured. It must be an exotic beast from the Milky Way. Hui Chanchan exclaimed. Yang Tian said, "In my hometown, this exotic beast is called the black tortoise. It is one of the 4 divine beasts. It is very powerful." As he spoke, Yang Tian looked at the giant turtle's injured left leg. There was a huge hole in its thick left leg, and he could even see the leg bone inside. The moment Yang Tian finished speaking, the flying ultra beasts in the sky were the first to attack the giant tortoise. At this moment, Yang Tian realized that these flying exotic beasts were holding some kind of black stone in their mouth. When they flew, their necks were drooping. It seemed that these black stones were very heavy. When they were above the giant turtle, these flying exotic beasts that looked like pterosaurs and bats immediately opened their mouth. The black stones that they were holding in their mouths fell down at an extremely fast speed. It was only 1,000 meters high, and the black stones fell faster and faster. In the end, there was a whistling sound. Just how heavy were these stones? When Yang Tian heard the whistling sound, his eyes widened in shock. The falling black stones seemed to be lethal to the giant turtle. It immediately retracted its head, limbs, and tail into its shell. Pring pring pring, black stones of different sizes fell down like raindrops. Some of them landed on the giant turtle's shell, creating loud crashing sounds. When they landed on the ground, they were like cannonballs, creating a large amount of gravel and bone fragments. Chapter 668. The tortoise's shell was very hard and thick. When the black stones fell to the ground, they created a deep pit, but they couldn't break through the tortoise's thick shell. These black stones. Stellar stones. Suddenly, Huey Meow Meow exclaimed in surprise. "What are stellar stones?" Yang Tian asked curiously. Huey Meow Meow said, "Stellar stones are the best material for forging weapons and armors. It is said that they are formed when the stars in the sky fall to the ground. The star rock was very hard and tough, but there was one thing that made it hard to melt. Apart from the extremely high temperature, other metal materials must be added to melt them. However, this way, the weapons and armors produced will not be as good as those made from pure stellar stones. Our casting department needs about 200 days to melt a furnace of stellar stones. After the melted stellar stone liquid is poured into molds and after the molds are formed, more than 100 days of polishing are needed to create usable weapons and armors. A piece of stellar stone the size of a finger was as heavy as an adult. This black tortoise, its shell's defensive power is simply too strong. Yang Tian nodded. A head-sized star stone already weighed several thousand kilograms. If it were to fall from a height of several thousand meters, in addition to the strong gravitational force of this place, it would probably be able to pierce through even a palm-thick steel plate. Yang Tian looked ahead and saw that the stellar stones were still falling like raindrops. There was a huge pile beside the tortoise. If this continued, the tortoise might be buried by the stellar stones. Are these stones valuable? Yang Tian asked Hui Miao Miao. He was interested in the stellar stones. At this time, Yang Tian had an idea. He wanted to use the metal refined from the stellar stones to create a spaceship. He wondered if he could use this spaceship to cross the Sea of Stars. Hui Miao Miao said, "Stellar stones are rare, but it is too difficult to melt them. Therefore, the demand is not high." What Hui Miao Miao meant was that these stones were not very valuable. What if there is a way to melt them quickly? Yang Tian asked with a smile. Hui Yichanchan asked curiously, "You have a way?" Could it be that he wanted Xiaolong to use its flames to melt this kind of stone? Then, Xiaolong is too tired. As soon as he said that, the little blue dragon's gaze towards Hui Yichanchan became much friendlier. Clearly, he had developed a good impression of this young girl. Yang Tian couldn't help but smile. Using a talisman formation can do this. Hui Miao Miao said, "Actually, the furnace that melts the star rocks uses the energy of the runes. You are very good at runes. Can you improve the smelting furnace?" "Sure," Yang Tian replied. A moment ago, the strange program had also said these two words in Yang Tian's mind. The study of runes was broad and profound. Humans' use of them was still in the early stages. If he did not cultivate, Yang Tian would be able to survive in this world just by relying on the strange program. The star rocks continued to fall as if there was no end to them. After a few minutes, Yang Tian finally realized that something was wrong. While the star rocks falling from the sky could not cause any harm to the giant tortoise, they had broken many of the spikes on the tortoise's shell. It seemed that the Beast King that was commanding the beasts was quite smart to have come up with this idea. Perhaps the Beast King that was commanding the beasts had fought with the giant tortoise before and had suffered a great loss. It was most likely because of the spikes on the tortoise's shell. Roar! When more than half of the spikes on the giant tortoise's shell had been broken, another majestic roar came from afar. Rumble! The beasts that were surrounding the giant tortoise finally began to move. Countless beasts began to run around the giant tortoise. They were getting faster and faster. The ground of the basin was being trampled by countless beasts. It kept on shaking and making thunderous sounds. "What are they doing?" Hui Yichanchan asked curiously when she saw this. Hui Miao Miao shook her head. She didn't understand what the beasts were doing either. Yang Tian frowned as well. He didn't know what kind of effect the beasts' actions would have on the giant tortoise. As the herd of beasts ran, the giant tortoise stuck its head out and pushed away the pile of star stones beside it. However, the strange thing was that it immediately retracted its head. It looked like it was frightened by the herd of beasts. At the same time, the encirclement of the beasts began to shrink. Like a tornado, they began to roll toward the giant tortoise. The giant tortoise was huge and cumbersome, like a small mountain. The beasts that were running around it quickly approached the giant tortoise. At this time, the most tragic thing happened. The beasts that were running in the center instantly came into contact with the star rocks that were piled up around the giant tortoise. A star rock that was the size of a finger would weigh more than 50 pounds. A star rock that was the size of a fist would weigh more than a few thousand pounds. It was not hard to imagine what would happen when the beasts crashed into such heavy and tough star rock. Looking at the situation from afar, Hui Chan screamed and turned around. She didn't dare to look anymore. The beasts that crashed into the pile of star rocks were all smashed into pieces. One by one, the beasts continued to crash into the pile of star rocks as if they weren't afraid of death. From afar, it looked like waves of blood. In less than a minute, the star rocks that were surrounding the giant tortoise were all knocked away. The beasts directly came into contact with the shell of the giant tortoise. Bang, 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 bang. Even from afar, Yang Tian could hear the rumbling noises. He could also hear the sounds of the beasts crashing into the giant tortoise's back. At this time, Yang Tian finally noticed something. He noticed that the giant tortoise's huge body was spinning along with the beasts, and it was spinning faster and faster. At this time, the giant tortoise was still hiding in its shell. As it spun, the giant tortoise's body slowly rose up. Yang Tian took a closer look and was surprised to see that countless beasts had arrived under the giant tortoise and lifted it up. At this time, the beasts still did not stop spinning. A large number of beasts gathered on the giant tortoise's body and lifted it up dozens of meters. Roar! At this time, another beast roar came from afar. After receiving the order, the speed of the herd of beasts finally slowed down and then stopped. Some of the larger beasts on the outer perimeter began to move and charge toward the giant tortoise. The beasts made way for the larger beasts. What are they doing? Hui Chan asked again. Yang Tian smiled and said, "If I'm not mistaken, these beasts want to flip the giant tortoise over." Before Yang Tian could even finish his sentence, Hui Chan was surprised again. Rumble, the larger beasts had been roaming around the outer perimeter of the beasts. When they began to run, it was just as shocking. Boom! After a short while, hundreds and thousands of large beasts stepped on the corpses of the beasts that had died and crashed into the bottom of the giant tortoise's shell. There was a loud explosion. Just as Yang Tian had expected, the giant tortoise's body was knocked into the air, flipped in the air, and landed on the ground. Now, the giant tortoise was in a position where its belly was facing the sky. For the giant tortoise that moved slowly, this position made it very difficult for it to flip over and move. Then, it could only allow the beasts to attack it as they wished. But was this really the case? After the giant tortoise's body was flipped over, it suddenly poked its head out from the shell, looked around, and then quickly shrunk its head back into the shell. By the looks of it, it was going to hide until the very end. The beasts had finally achieved their goal and began to slowly retreat. Roar! At this time, another beast roar came from not far away. There was a sense of pride in the roar. Chapter 669. After the roar, the group of beasts split up and opened up a path that was more than 10 meters wide. A giant beast that was more than 10 meters long and 5 to 6 meters tall appeared in front of Yang Tian and the rest. Its body was covered with shiny golden scales as it walked towards the giant tortoise. This guy was the king of this group of beasts. From the aura it emitted, it was actually a Destiny Realm beast. What kind of beast is this? Yang Tian asked curiously. Hui Chan said, I know. It's called the Flame Beast. It's one of the most ferocious beasts. It's the king of beasts. This area was called the Yen region, and this beast was called the Flame Beast. From the name, one could tell the status of this beast among the beasts. Just like on Earth, when people mention the king of the forest, they would first think of the tiger. Looking at the Flame Beast, the little blue dragon's eyes were filled with battle intent. Although its realm was not as high as the Flame Beast, the little blue dragon still wanted to fight it. If the Flame Beast was considered a tiger, then 3 of the 4 divine beasts were here. Just as Yang Tian was thinking, a whistling sound could be heard. From the sky, a huge black bird suddenly descended. This black bird had a wingspan of 100 meters and looked like an eagle. There were too many flying beasts in the sky. This giant bird was flying at the highest point, but they did not notice it before. This time, without waiting for Yang Tian to ask, Hui Chanchan said, "This is the Black Spirit. It's a very cunning and sinister beast." The Black Spirit landed on the opposite mountain and lowered its head to look at the situation below. Yang Tian could not help but smile. Finally, they had gathered enough 4 divine beasts. This Black Spirit was also a strange beast in the destiny comprehension realm. The Flame Beast seemed to know that the Black Spirit was coming. As it walked, it only turned its head to look at it before continuing to walk towards the giant tortoise. These 2 beast kings seemed to be working together to deal with the giant tortoise. One had to know that their intelligence was not inferior to adult. Compared to the giant tortoise, the Flame Beast and the Black Spirit were much smaller. In terms of realm, they couldn't be compared to the giant tortoise. However, for exotic beasts, sometimes it really wasn't easy to use their cultivation to measure their combat strength. For example, a sheep in the destiny comprehension realm might not be able to defeat a tiger in the illusion realm. When the Flame Beast was 100 meters away from the giant tortoise, it stopped and became cautious. Roar! Suddenly, the Flame Beast opened its mouth and roared at the giant tortoise. His voice was filled with a strong fighting spirit. It seemed like the Flame Beast was testing the giant tortoise. After the cry, the giant tortoise did not react at all. It was like a huge rock. After its body was flipped over, the giant tortoise only stuck its head out and looked around before retracting its head. Yang Tian now understood why the description of the enemy hiding in the city or fortress was called turtling. What should that black tortoise do now? Can't move, and there are so many enemies around. Hui Chanchan could not help but worry for the giant tortoise. Yang Tian smiled. You'll know in a while. This giant tortoise is not as simple as you think. It has many tricks up its sleeve. At this moment, Yang Tian could not help but recall the situation on Earth where he faced a huge mutated turtle. That giant tortoise could use water to injure its enemies. What about this giant tortoise? It must have some powerful tricks up its sleeve. Yang Tian then thought of another question. Tortoises moved slowly, and the star ocean was very far away. How did it crawl here? At this time, the other cultivators were also staring at the situation below. Although he could not see the expressions on their faces, Yang Tian could imagine that many of them had excited expressions. Because when the 3 exotic beasts fought and all 3 were injured, they might be able to take advantage of the situation. Actually, Yang Tian had the same thought in his mind. After the Flame Beast roared, the giant tortoise did not react at all. His courage grew as he slowly approached the giant tortoise. When he was about 30 meters away from the giant tortoise, the Flame Beast finally stopped. Then, he began to walk around the Flame Beast, wanting to know the giant tortoise's weakness. He then looked at the Black Spirit resting on the mountain peak. It stretched its neck and spread its wings, eager to try. The humans wanted the giant tortoise's life crystal, and so did the exotic beast. Although they knew that many human cultivators were watching, the 2 beast kings did not care because they had many subordinate. To them, the number of cultivators who came here was too small. Roar! After circling the giant tortoise once, the Flame Beast roared again. It seemed that it could not find the giant tortoise's weakness. Yang Tian could not help but think of a saying, when a dog bites a tortoise, there is no place to bite. This exotic beast with a very high level did not seem to be dangerous. The cunning Black Spirit finally could not help but spread its wings and fly over. It landed on the giant tortoise's stomach. The giant tortoise's stomach was relatively flat. After the Black Spirit landed, it used its sharp claws to scratch the shell of the giant tortoise's stomach. A series of cracking sounds could be heard. But the shell was too hard and too thick. No matter how much strength the Black Spirit used, it could only leave shallow scratches on the shell. Seeing what was happening, Hui and Chan Chan began to giggle. Yang Tian, Auntie, look! The two exotic beasts can't do anything to the black tortoise. After hearing from Yang Tian that the giant tortoise was one of the 4 mythical beasts, just like the little blue dragon, Hui and Chan Chan had a good impression of the giant tortoise. At this time, Yang Tian narrowed his eyes. He could sense that the giant tortoise was about to make its move. Yang Tian's instincts were always accurate. Since it could not scratch with its claws, the black spirit began to use its sharp beak to peck at the giant tortoise's shell. A series of popping sounds could be heard. The flame beast did not give up and continued to walk around the giant tortoise. Finally, it found a place to attack. The giant tortoise's head. Boom! The flame beast opened its mouth and spat out a red flame at the giant tortoise's head. But still, there was no reaction. According to what Yang Tian knew, the weakness of the tortoises was their head and tail. That was because there was soft tissue there, allowing them to extend and retract their head. But this giant tortoise seemed to be different. It did not have any reaction even after being burned by the flames. After spitting out a few more flames, the flame beast had no choice but to give up. It turned around and walked to the other side. At this time, the giant tortoise finally moved. It suddenly extended its head and bit the flame beast. At the same time, a series of crackling sounds could be heard. The giant tortoise's head began to flash with bright electricity, just like the lightning in the sky. The flame beast did not even have the time to scream before it was electrocuted to death. The movement of this big guy stretching its head out was really too fast. It was so fast that Yang Tian did not even see how it extended its head. After killing the flame beast, there was still the annoying black spirit left. The black spirit was very cunning. When it saw the flame beast being bitten by the giant tortoise, it knew that things were not going well. It immediately flapped its wings and flew away. The black spirit's reaction was fast, but it could not escape from the giant tortoise's attack. Boom! There was a loud noise. A powerful electric current could be seen coming from between the giant tortoise's horns, striking the black spirit in the air. The black spirit was not electrocuted to death, but it could not fly and fell from the sky. At this time, the giant tortoise extended its 4 legs and flipped over on the ground. With a bounce of its 4 legs, it flipped over its body. It was beyond Yang Tian's expectation that the giant could flip over with its 4 legs. Boom! 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 The giant tortoise crawled quickly. The low-level beasts around it did not dare to stop it and all moved to the side. When it arrived in front of the black spirit, the giant tortoise immediately bit the black spirit that was still alive. With a crack, the black spirit let out a cry and lowered its head. The Beast King had been killed. The beasts in the sky and on the ground all fled after a short moment of panic. Seeing what had happened, Hui Chanchan's eyes widened as she yelled out, "Ah! Black Tortoise is so smart!" Chapter 670. Seeing that the giant tortoise was about to swallow the Destiny Enlightenment Realm Dark Spirit, the greedy cultivators could no longer hold themselves back and rushed towards the giant tortoise. The giant tortoise had already noticed the presence of humans, but it did not care. It raised its head, opened its mouth and moved its neck, swallowing more than half of the dark spirit in its mouth. Only its 2 long wings could be seen at the side of its mouth. Ah! A cultivator was the first to arrive. With a shout, he slashed the giant tortoise's head with his sword. The giant tortoise did not dodge and allowed the sword to land on its head with a loud bang. The giant tortoise was unharmed, but the cultivator was knocked back and his sword fell out of his hand. Boom! Boom! Before the cultivator landed on the ground, the giant tortoise released a thick electric current and struck the cultivator's body. The powerful electric current immediately electrocuted the cultivator. His corpse fell to the ground and emitted black smoke as if it was cooked by the electric current. Next, the giant tortoise moved its neck a few more times and finally swallowed the giant dark spirit into its stomach. The entire process was extremely short and only took a few seconds. At this time, the other cultivators had already flashed to the side of the fire beast's corpse and used their swords to cut open the fire beast's chest. Soon, a golden life crystal of the destiny state was taken out. To the cultivators who came here, this was a very precious life crystal. During the last beast horde, the Hui family had sacrificed so many people and paid a huge price. However, the number of Destiny Enlightenment Realm life crystals they obtained did not exceed 100. In order to obtain this life crystal, the cultivators began to fight. The cultivator who used his sword to pick out the life crystal was wearing yellow armor. No one knew which family he was from. As soon as he took out the life crystal, he was beheaded by another cultivator who was also wearing yellow armor before he could put it into his storage bracelet. The yellow-armored cultivator who had just killed his comrade did not have it easy either. Soon, he was surrounded by two black-armored cultivators in the chaotic battle. The life crystal kept jumping around in the crowd. No one allowed the other to put the life crystal into their storage bracelet. Squeak! Seeing this situation, the little blue dragon cried out excitedly. It jumped off Yang Tian's shoulder and flew towards the group of people. Although the life crystal was precious, Yang Tian did not want to compete with them. His target was the giant tortoise. Of course, Yang Tian didn't want to kill it, but he wanted to get information about Qin Fei from it. This giant tortoise was as intelligent as a human. Yang Tian believed that he should be able to communicate with it. However, it seemed that he would have to wait a little longer. The giant tortoise tilted its head and looked at the dozens of cultivators who were fighting over it. Although they were far apart and Yang Tian could not see its eyes, he could guess that the giant tortoise's eyes were filled with disdain. The little blue dragon was fast and small. It approached the crowd that was fighting for the life crystals without anyone noticing. Suddenly, the life crystal was thrown into the air. The little blue dragon seized the opportunity and jumped up. After it was in the air, it hugged the life crystal with its two claws. The guy was cunning. After getting the life crystal, it immediately flew to a higher place. It then made a turn in the air and dashed into a cave. The little blue dragon came so suddenly that these people did not have time to react. This was the little blue dragon's advantage. Before this, the little blue dragon had already investigated this cave. Soon, it returned to the entrance of the cave where Yang Tian was through the cave network. The whole process took less than 3 minutes. After it returned, the little blue dragon hugged the golden life crystal and gnawed on it, making a gurgling sound. At this moment, Yang Tian had already squatted down and hid behind a big rock at the entrance of the cave. "Xiao Long, you're so powerful. Is it delicious? Can I have a bite?" Hui Chanchan squatted in front of the little blue dragon and teased the little blue dragon. Hui Chanchan thought the little blue dragon was unwilling. She did not expect it to pass the life crystal that had a chip on it to Hui Chanchan. It looked very generous. Hui Chanchan was amused by the little blue dragon's cute behavior and could not stop giggling. Yang Tian laughed too. Of course, the little blue dragon knew that cultivators could not eat life crystals directly. That was why it was so generous. "You're such a cute dragon. How about you and me in the future? I'll definitely treat you better than Yang Tian." Hui Chanchan was trying to poach Lin Huang. She had liked the little blue dragon for a long time. The little blue dragon retracted its claws angrily and ignored Hui Chanchan. It continued to gnaw on the life crystal. As Hui Chanchan spoke, the people below finally stopped fighting. They looked around the cave, trying to find where Yang Tian was. After finding nothing, they all shook their heads and gave up. Even if they found Yang Tian now, it would be useless because Yang Tian had enough time to put the life crystal into his storage tool. Even if they killed Yang Tian, it would be useless. They could only blame themselves for being unlucky. Within a few minutes, There were more than 10 dead bodies left because of the fight for the life crystal. It seemed like the little blue dragon had saved more people from dying by taking the life crystal. Now that the little blue dragon had taken the life crystal, they all turned their attention to the giant tortoise. Kill! Someone shouted with murderous intent, and hundreds of cultivators began to attack the giant tortoise. The giant tortoise retracted its head, tail, and 4 legs into its tough shell like before. If they could kill the giant tortoise and obtain the life crystal in its body, they would be rich. With the life crystal, they could enter one of the 3 temples in the Cloud Dominion and live comfortably for the rest of their lives. Those who were attacking the giant tortoise were all from the thousands of cultivators. Their realms were not very high. The truly powerful ones were all watching from the side. Boom! 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 The sound of explosions and violent collisions kept ringing out. The cultivators wanted to destroy the giant tortoise's shell. However, after attacking for half a day and using all sorts of methods, they were all useless. Instead, the aura coming from the giant tortoise's body was getting stronger. It was like a sturdy mountain that could not be moved by human strength. Clearly, after the giant tortoise swallowed a destiny enlightenment mutated beast, it had replenished some of its energy and might have become even more powerful. As time passed, more and more cultivators joined the ranks of the cultivators attacking the giant tortoise. Some of the cultivators of the same race even joined forces. Hui Chanchan had a good impression of the giant tortoise. When she saw the situation in front of her, she did not blink and looked worried. The Destiny Enlightenment Life Crystal contained a large amount of energy. The little blue dragon could not order its subordinates to consume it. It only ate half of it and gave the other half to Yang Tian. Then, the little blue dragon curled up its body and closed its eyes. Its body emitted waves of chaotic energy. After consuming enough energy, the little blue dragon began to level up. As the number of cultivators increased, their attacks became more and more powerful. The giant tortoise's body began to tremble. Everyone, stop! At this time, an old man shouted to stop them. However, the cultivators attacking the giant tortoise did not stop. Chapter 671. At this moment, the cultivators who were attacking the giant tortoise were in a frenzy. The life crystal in the giant tortoise's body was too attractive to them. They did not consider that with their current combat strength, they would not be able to hurt the giant tortoise at all. Therefore, no one listened to the old man's words. At this moment, the aura coming from the giant tortoise became even more powerful. Bzzzt. Boom. Suddenly, countless messy and thick electric arcs lit up on the surface of the giant tortoise's body. As soon as it appeared, it instantly covered a radius of 1,000 meters. The 1,000 cultivators who were attacking the giant tortoise were naturally within the range of the electric shock. The intensity of the electric shock this time was 1,000 times stronger than when the giant tortoise attacked it earlier. After the explosion, the giant tortoise's surroundings finally quieted down. Within 1,000 meters of its body, the cultivators were completely wiped out. None of the cultivators who were hit by the electric shock survived. Seeing this, Yang Tian's eyes widened. His eyes were filled with horror. It was his first time seeing such a powerful electric shock. With this method, the giant tortoise was simply invincible, as expected of a mutated beast from the Sea of Stars. More than 1,000 Illusion Realm cultivators and a small number of Destiny Realm cultivators were killed just like that. After killing the humans who attacked it, the giant tortoise extended its head and limbs again. At this moment, it exuded an aura that looked down on the world. This was a true divine beast. Its dignity could not be violated. Boom! 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 Suddenly, the giant tortoise moved. It crawled toward the underground crevice that it crawled out from not far away, as if it wanted to return underground. However, the human cultivators would not let it do as it wished. Dozens of purple shadows flashed past. When these purple shadows became clear, Yang Tian finally saw that they were all old men in loose robes. They are from the everlasting temple. Seeing these purple-robed men, Huey Meow Meow suddenly exclaimed. Then, she quickly added, looking at their realms and ages, they should all be priests of the temple. There were a total of 18 people. All of them were priests of the temple, cultivators of the 100-change realm. Yang Tian knew about the position system in the divine palace. The minister was second only to the temple master and had great power in the divine palace. This time, the deity's Templar had sent more than a dozen division stewards. Only the temple master had not come. Go. Let's go take a look. At this moment, Yang Tian finally couldn't hold it in any longer. Hui Meow Meow nodded. Yang Tian picked up the little blue dragon from the ground and stuffed it into Hui Chan Chan's arms, making her extremely happy. She finally touched the little blue dragon. The little blue dragon was digesting the life crystal that it had just swallowed. As long as there was no danger, it would not wake up. The three of them quickly exited the cave and walked towards the giant tortoise. The remaining 1,000 people also walked out of their hiding place like Yang Tian and stopped a few hundred meters away from the giant tortoise. This distance was already very dangerous. If the giant tortoise released electricity again, they would all be in trouble. However, they were a group of desperados and were not afraid. Moreover, the 18 division stewards were even closer to the giant tortoise. After being surrounded by the 18 division stewards, the giant tortoise had already stopped. It moved its huge head and looked at the 18 people coldly. After the division stewards surrounded the giant tortoise, they did not move. One of the elders even bowed to the giant tortoise and said something that Yang Tian did not understand. As soon as the elder finished speaking, the giant tortoise's eyes became even sharper. Obviously, the giant tortoise was unhappy with the elder's words. What did he say? Yang Tian turned his head and asked Hui Meow Meow. Hui Meow Meow said softly. He spoke in the ancient language. High-level mutated beasts can understand it. This division steward wants the black tortoise to follow them back to the infinite temple and take good care of it. So that was the case. Yang Tian curled his lips and said disdainfully, It's not that stupid. If it follows them back to the infinite temple, it might be put under house arrest. In order to prevent the giant tortoise from releasing electricity again, Yang Tian released his mental power and surrounded himself and the two sisters. The two sisters did not know about this. If the division stewards heard such disrespectful words, Yang Tian would definitely lose his life. Hui Meow Meow hurriedly said in a deep voice, Yang Tian, don't talk nonsense. The division stewards won't do that. While speaking, Hui Meow Meow gave Yang Tian a look. Yang Tian could not help but laugh. His voice could not be heard at all. Moreover, the division steward's attention was all on the giant tortoise. Even if they heard it, they probably would not do anything to Yang Tian. These people would definitely know who was more important. Seeing how cautious Hui Meow Meow was, Yang Tian did not say anything else. The giant tortoise did not say anything, but its eyes became sharper. It was obviously rejecting the division stewards. The giant tortoise was not stupid. The deacons of the sacred hall were arrogant people, so their courteous attitude towards the giant tortoise was met with a cold glare from the giant tortoise. They frowned immediately. Yang Tian could not help but say, Looks like my guess was right. These division stewards of the infinite temple are indeed up to no good. Hui Meow Meow did not comment on Yang Tian's words, because the division steward spoke to the giant tortoise again. Hui Meow Meow was not familiar with the ancient language, so she had to listen carefully. After the division steward finished speaking, Hui Meow Meow said, The division steward said that if it doesn't agree, the infinite temple will forcibly take it back. As soon as Hui Meow Meow finished speaking, a dozen white figures suddenly flashed. Then, another dozen white figures appeared. Blue figures. 18 blue-robed old men and 18 white-robed old men suddenly appeared. The positions where they stood also surrounded the giant tortoise. Huey Meow Meow was surprised again. She said to Yang Tian, "The blue-robed elders are the division stewards of the Starry Sky Temple, and the white-robed elders are the division stewards of the Sky Domain Temple." 18 division stewards of the 3 temples had come at the same time, as if they had discussed it beforehand. The division stewards of the Infinite Temple were not surprised by the arrival of the division stewards of the other 2 temples. There were a total of 48 division stewards, and they stood in a certain position. It was obvious that the 48 division stewards were in the same group. In order to defeat the giant tortoise, the 3 temples had their differences and competition, but they were united now. The 48 transformation realm cultivators were a powerful force. If they worked together, who knew if they could defeat the giant tortoise? Until now, Yang Tian still could not determine the level of the giant tortoise. Rise. After everyone had arrived, the purple-robed division steward who had just spoken suddenly shouted. At the same time, the 48 division stewards raised their hands and clasped them together, forming many afterimages. Waves of rune energy were emitted from their hands. There are space rune, time rune, life rune, 5 elemental rune. They are setting up. It should be a sealing rune formation. After sensing the rune energy, the strange program said to Yang Tian in his mind. Chapter 672. The 48 supervisors worked together to set up a sealing rune array. Instantly, countless blue lines of light appeared and formed a giant net, trapping the giant tortoise. At this time, Yang Tian's heart skipped a beat. If the temple's supervisors sealed the giant tortoise and took it away, how was he going to ask the giant tortoise about Qin Fei? Boom! Of course, the giant tortoise would not be restrained. Suddenly, thick electric sparks flashed on the surface of its body, and there was a loud noise. The thick electric sparks clashed violently with the blue lines of light from the sealing rune array. The 48 supervisors maintained their fixed gestures, gritted their teeth, and slowly retreated. The electric sparks on the giant tortoise's body grew larger and larger, forcing the blue lines of light from the sealing rune array to scatter. As they retreated, one of the supervisors gritted his teeth and reminded his companions, "Everyone, hold on. This mutated beast has been injured and is not at its peak. It will not be able to hold on for long." As soon as he said that, the supervisors could not help but feel refreshed. They opened their eyes wide and tried their best to hold on. Their retreating speed became slower and slower. In the end, they actually stopped and began to slowly move toward the giant tortoise again. During this process, the electric sparks released by the giant tortoise were suppressed by the blue lines of light, and the range became smaller and smaller. It seemed that the giant tortoise was about to be completely suppressed. Buzz! Suddenly, there was a muffled sound. Next, there was a loud boom that shook the sky. From the giant tortoise's body, a strange energy suddenly burst out and broke the blue lines of light. The powerful explosion sent the 48 division stewards flying. Bang! 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 Pft! Pft! The supervisors violently fell to the ground and collided with the hard starstones. They all spat out mouthfuls of blood. This giant tortoise was actually able to injure 4,800 transformation realm cultivators when it was injured. In that case, just how powerful was it when it was at its peak? After spitting out blood, the supervisors immediately got up from the ground. They looked very dispirited, and the energy ripples coming from their bodies were very messy. Even so, they still had the strength to fight. Kill. A purple-robed elder from the Everlasting Temple stood up from the ground, holding his chest. He coldly looked at the giant tortoise and shouted. Previously, they had wanted to seal the giant tortoise and bring it back for research. Now, they had a strong desire to kill the giant tortoise. In the hearts of these people, the giant tortoise was actually the same as an exotic beast. Yang Tian had cultivated spiritual energy before, so he naturally understood that the energy that had suddenly erupted from the giant tortoise was spiritual energy. Although the 48 deities were injured, they still had the strength to fight. Looking at the giant tortoise again, its originally proud head had slightly drooped down, and its eyes no longer had the same sharp light as before. Just like what the supervisor had said, it was already injured and its energy was greatly depleted. If it hadn't swallowed a destiny comprehension realm exotic beast, it would have collapsed long ago. The 48 supervisors flashed back to their original positions and began to move their hands again. Previously, they had jointly released a sealing talisman array to trap the giant tortoise and make it submit. Now they had used a killing array. Red rays of light appeared between their hands, forming a ring of red light that swept towards the giant tortoise. Pung! The red ray of light was like a tightened rope as it struck the giant tortoise's body and let out a muffled sound. The red ray of light had a very strong cutting ability. The giant tortoise's tough shell was cut open by the red ray of light that was more than a meter deep. Pung! Pung! Pring! The red rays of light continued to be released from the hands of the supervisors. They were like ripples as they tightened and struck the giant tortoise's shell. The red rays of light seemed to be cutting at the same spot on the giant tortoise's body. The cuts were getting deeper and deeper, and they were about to cut through the giant tortoise's shell. At this time, Yang Tian clenched his fist. If the giant tortoise was killed, then who could he ask for information about Qin Fei? Yang Tian's hope was placed on the giant tortoise. Yang Tian, look! Suddenly, Hui Chanchan pointed at something under the giant tortoise's belly and cried out. Yang Tian looked at where Hui Chanchan was pointing, and his eyes widened as well. He saw a palm-sized green tortoise crawling out from under the giant tortoise's belly. Compared to the giant tortoise, the little tortoise was too small. If they had not found it by chance, they would not have been able to see it. Hui Chanchan had sharp eyes. The giant tortoise could be a mother tortoise, and the little tortoise could be its child. The little tortoise crawled very quickly and quickly crawled out from under the giant tortoise's belly. It crawled until it was dozens of meters away from the giant tortoise, then turned around and looked at the giant tortoise in front of it, unwilling to leave. The giant tortoise turned around and looked at the little tortoise with love in its eyes. Naturally, the supervisors of the temple had noticed the little tortoise as well. When they saw the giant tortoise's eyes, they knew that the little tortoise was very important to the giant tortoise. Looking at the little tortoise, the giant tortoise's eyes suddenly became stern. Seeing the giant tortoise's eyes, the little tortoise naturally understood what the mother tortoise meant. It reluctantly turned its little head and began to crawl toward Yang Tian and the others. Pft! At this time, the red light that was shot out from the hands of the supervisors suddenly cut through the giant tortoise's shell. A large amount of blood flowed out from the tortoise's shell. Roar! At this time, the giant tortoise finally let out its first roar since it came to this world. It no longer stayed where it was and once again unleashed its powerful spiritual energy, forming a huge spiritual energy shield around it. At this time, the little green tortoise had already crawled out of the encirclement formed by the 48 supervisors, and its spiritual energy had just managed to envelop the 48 supervisors. These supervisors were very knowledgeable and naturally knew that the energy that the giant tortoise used was a strange spiritual energy. As soon as they sensed it, they immediately retreated. But it was too late. Boom! With a loud explosion, the giant tortoise's gigantic body suddenly exploded. In that instant, the 48 supervisors were all enveloped by its spiritual energy, forming an enclosed space. No one expected that the giant tortoise would have such a strong temper that it wanted to die together with the supervisors. Yang Tian could understand these divine beasts. They were just like the little blue dragon. They were even more arrogant than humans. Humans looked down on them, but they looked down on humans as well. They thought that humans were insignificant creatures. Yang Tian's eyes were filled with a red mist of blood. Huge pieces of meat and pieces of the tortoise's shell were suddenly shot toward him. Yang Tian opened his eyes and unleashed his most powerful spiritual energy, pushing Hui Chanchan and Hui Miao Miao onto the ground. As soon as the three of them lay down, the shock wave swept past them. Chapter 673. The powerful shock wave lasted for a few minutes, almost dissipating Yang Tian's spiritual energy. Just as Yang Tian was about to collapse, it finally stopped. Yang Tian immediately jumped up from the ground. What appeared in front of him was a huge pit left behind by the giant tortoise's self-destruction. The giant tortoise's blood was a little strange. After the explosion, it didn't disperse with the airflow. Instead, it formed a faint red mist in this small area, and the air was filled with the thick smell of blood. Around the pit were large chunks of tortoise meat and shell, as well as some of the giant tortoise's internal organs. Cough, cough. Yang Tian was about to step forward when suddenly, a cough came from the edge of the pit. Then, there was a bang sound. A purple-robed elder stood up from the pile of rocks, his body swaying as if he was about to fall. Even such a powerful explosion didn't kill the fire steward. Yang Tian was very surprised. Taking a closer look, Yang Tian found that there were runes flashing on the warden's purple robe. As a warden in the temple, he naturally had a high-level rune magic treasure. This purple robe was undoubtedly a very powerful defensive magic treasure. After the old man came out, several other supervisors crawled out from the edge of the pit. Although they didn't die, they seemed to be seriously injured. They were all coughing and some were even vomiting blood. Out of the 48 supervisors, less than 10 stood up. It was unknown whether the others were dead or unconscious. The surrounding cultivators who were watching the battle gathered around the pit as the explosion disappeared. Although the giant tortoise was dead, it might have left behind something good. Even if it was just tortoise meat, they could take it back for research. Huff, huff, huff. A moment later, there was a burst of whistling in the sky. Yang Tian didn't need to look up to know that those big family heads who had been waiting outside must have come in a spaceship. Maybe the family heads of these families were also on the spaceship. These people were very smart, like the oriole behind the praying mantis, always showing up at the most critical moment. Hundreds of huge spaceships landed at the edge of the flatland. The Hui family's spaceship landed not far away from Yang Tian and the others. Hui Baixing and the head of the hunting department walked out of the spaceship together. In the distance, Yang Tian recognized the female patriarch of the 100 Cry clan, 100 Cry Seun. Surrounded by a group of subordinates, she quickly walked over. Yang Tian, where is that little guy? Hui Chanchan looked around and didn't see the little green turtle. She frowned and asked. Yang Hongwu glanced at the place where little green tortoise was. It was already covered by the sand and stones caused by the explosion. He sighed and said lightly, "It was probably blown away by the airflow." So small, so pitiful. Hui Chanchan's eyes reddened. After a large number of cultivators arrived, they surrounded the huge pit. Naturally, no one cared about the little green turtle. After the giant tortoise self-destructed, other than its broken shell and flesh, it left behind some good stuff. At the bottom of the pit that was more than 10 meters deep, there were a large number of colorful crystals. These crystals were constantly releasing faint energy into the air. They looked very similar to the life crystals produced in other mutated beasts. Could these be the remaining life crystals in the giant tortoise's body? Looking at the large number of crystals in the pit, everyone's eyes were filled with greed. If not for the fact that the priest of the temple was still there, they would have rushed forward to snatch them. Yang Tian, Hui Chanchan, and Hui Miao Miao walked over. "Please make way, make way." The edge of the pit was already filled with people. Hui Chanchan carried the sleeping little blue dragon and shouted as she squeezed forward. Seeing that she was a little girl, the others didn't argue with her. Yang Tian and Hui Miao Miao followed behind Hui Chanchan and squeezed to the edge of the pit. "Wow, these crystals are so beautiful." When she saw the colorful crystals at the bottom of the pit, Hui Yi-chan-chan's eyes widened in shock. At this moment no one spoke. Hui Yi-chan-chan's voice was very loud. These should be the giant beast's life crystals. There are so many of them. I wonder what level they are. There are so many of them. Everyone can get a piece. Don't even think about it. The priests of the temple paid a huge price to kill the giant beast. These life crystals should belong to the priests. As soon as Hui Yi-chan-chan finished speaking, many people began to express their opinions. Some of them wanted to test the priest's reactions. Others wanted to suck up to the temple, hoping to get on their good side. However, everyone's eyes were filled with greed. All of you back off. Suddenly, the purple-robed elder who had calmed down shouted. After that, they all shut their mouths and obediently took a few steps back. At this moment, the priests finally calmed down the energy waves in their bodies and began to look for their companions. Soon, they found a few priests who were still alive in the pile of rubble. The rest of the priests had been blown into pieces. Only parts of their bodies were found. Although the giant tortoise had died, it had killed more than 20 priests of the temple. Damn it! One of the priests gritted his teeth after seeing the bodies of his companions. What should we do with these crystals? Suddenly, a woman's voice was heard. Yang Tian raised his head and looked to the side. It was Baiming Siyun from the Baiming clan. A patriarch of a clan asked. The expressions on the faces of several officials became solemn. It seemed that it was impossible for the temple to take all the crystals away. All the clans had sent people to clear the way for the priest. If they did not get any benefits, they would complain. Although these clans were very weak, the consequences of the divine temple going too far wouldn't be good for the divine temple. The purple-robed priest was silent for a moment. Just as he was about to speak, Hui Yi-chan-chan shouted again, "Look, it's over there." Yang Tian did not realize that Hui Yi-chan-chan had seen the little green tortoise again. She was so surprised that she shouted. After the giant tortoise died, the little green tortoise crawled back sadly. It kept rubbing its head against the colorful crystals in the pit. The crystals still had the giant tortoise's life force. Looking at the little green tortoise, the purple-robed priest's eyes were filled with coldness. He suddenly raised his hand and was about to kill the little green tortoise. Hui Yi-chan-chan did not notice the purple-robed priest's action. She suddenly hugged the little blue dragon that had just opened its eyes and jumped into the pit. Seeing Hui Yi-chan-chan jump into the pit, the purple-robed priest narrowed his eyes and slapped her. He thought that Hui Yi-chan-chan had jumped into the pit to take the crystals. Then, he would kill her and the little green tortoise together. This was the purple-robed priest's angry slap. Hui Yi-chan-chan did not expect that the purple-robed priest would attack her at this time. A powerful but invisible energy blasted toward Hui Yi-chan-chan. The little blue dragon that had just woken up sensed danger. It rushed out from Hui Yi-chan-chan's arms and slammed into the energy that was coming toward Hui Yi-chan-chan. Bang! There was a muffled sound. Even though the little blue dragon had already reached the peak of the illusion realm, it could not block the purple-robed priest's attack. After being hit by the powerful energy, the little blue dragon's body flew over Hui Yi-chan-chan's head and slammed into the side of the pit. It created a huge pit and was then buried by the rock. Xiao Long. Seeing this, Yang Tian's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He shouted and rushed into the pit. At this time, Hui Yi-chan-chan had just picked up the little green tortoise. She did not know what had just happened. Yang Tian and the little blue dragon were telepathically connected. Naturally, he knew that the little blue dragon was heavily injured. He quickly dug the little blue dragon out of the pit. Blocking the energy for Hui Yi-chan-chan was the little blue dragon's subconscious action. It did not want such a lively and kind girl like Hui Yi-chan-chan to die. Because of this, the little blue dragon had paid the price of being heavily injured. After the little blue dragon was dug out by Yang Tian from the rocks, the little blue dragon's eyes were closed and its aura was very weak. Looking at the purple-robed priest, Yang Tian's face was twisted with anger. He said coldly, "Those who hurt Xiao Long shall die." Chapter 674. Yang Tian, have you lost your mind? Huehe Baixing growled as soon as Yang Tian had finished his furious roar. With that, he shot a glance at Yang Tian. He wanted Yang Tian to apologize to the purple-robed supervisor. Huehe Baixing held Yang Tian in high regard, so he obviously did not want anything to happen to Yang Tian. Yang Tian was only at returnance right now, while the supervisor he threatened was at 100 transformation. Even if the supervisor was heavily injured, he was not someone Yang Tian could defeat. Yang Tian frowned even more. He lowered his head and looked at the little blue dragon in his arms. His anger that had just calmed down began to boil once again. Yang Tian, what's wrong with Xiaolong? Only now did Huehe Chanchan return to her senses. She knew that the little blue dragon had saved her. Looking at the little blue dragon whose eyes were closed and whose vitality was weak, she felt extremely pained. At this moment, the azure turtle in Huehe Chanchan's arms extended its neck and glanced at the little blue dragon in Yang Tian's arms. How could the supervisors of the Divine Hall allow Yang Tian to act so recklessly? Even if Yang Tian apologized right now, they would not spare Yang Tian. This was not just a matter of personal pride. It was a matter of the dignity of the Divine Hall. The supervisors who carried out missions represented the 3 Divine Halls. Even if the Divine Hall was far away from the Yen domain, it still possessed great power. All the clans had to act according to the Divine Hall's wishes. There were a total of 13 supervisors who could still move. Their gazes towards Yang Tian became colder and colder. "Little girl, come up quick," Huehe Baixing said in a hurry when he sensed that something was amiss. "No." He never thought that Huehe Chanchan would shake her head and refuse. "Yang Tian and Xiaolong offended these people to save me. Brother, kill them all. This way Yang Tian will be fine." As soon as Huey Chanchan said that, Huey Baixing felt awkward. He thought that his sister was too insensible. In fact, if the Radiant's 100 Stars really wanted to take action, they were confident that they could kill these heavily injured officials. One had to know that the Radiant's Disaster Baixing was now a Pinnacle Destiny Enlightenment Cultivator, only 1 level lower than the Wardens. Furthermore, the Wardens had been severely injured, so their battle prowess was less than 1/10 of their original. But if he did that, the Hui family would be finished. How could a small family contend against 3 shrines? Yang Tian saved Huey Chanchan, so Huey Baixing was very grateful. However, this gratitude was nothing compared to the survival of the entire clan. "Chanchan, you go up first. You'll get in my way if you stay here." Yang Tian understood the current situation. He coldly looked at the purple-robed official and said indifferently. Huey Chanchan nodded. "Yang Tian, you have to be careful." She naturally understood that Yang Tian was in danger. She had said that on purpose, hoping that her brother would say something to save Yang Tian. However, the Radiant's Disaster Baixing was unmoved. Clearly, he was thinking about the clan. As the head of the clan, he couldn't act recklessly. Huey Chanchan leapt out of the huge pit and returned to the Radiant's Disaster Baixing's side. The stewards watched the whole process but did not do anything. They didn't want to force the Hui family into a corner. Right now, getting rid of Yang Tian was the most important thing. These old men had lived for more than 1,000 years, and no one had ever dared to say the word die to them. After experiencing countless battles, Yang Tian had already reached a state where he could move his mind according to his heart's desire. Actually, during this period of time, his mind power had already locked onto the large pieces of colorful crystals at the bottom of the pit. Because it was his mind power, the Wardens, who had a high cultivation base, hadn't discovered it. The purple-robed Warden stared coldly at Yang Tian and slowly raised his hand. He had actually used up most of the energy in his body when he had furiously struck out at Huey Chanchan earlier. The reason why he had been talking for so long was because he was adjusting the energy in his body. At this moment, the purple-robed warden extracted a large amount of energy from his body. This energy was not even 1/100th of his peak state, but it was more than enough to kill a returnance cultivator. Seeing the purple-robed warden move, Yang Tian waved his hand and the colorful crystals he had locked onto with his mind power suddenly vanished before everyone's eyes. Most of the crystals had been stowed away in Yang Tian's storage bracelet. Cultivators had to go through a short process to store items in their storage bracelet. First, they had to lock onto the item with their mind and open the bracelet. Just like when he had stolen the life crystal of the flame beast, if Yang Tian had done it, he would have been able to store the life crystal in his storage bracelet in an instant. This was because he possessed mind power. Ever since he had come to this world, Yang Tian had not discovered any other cultivators who possessed mind power aside from him. Seeing Yang Tian store away most of the crystals, the cultivators in the surroundings could not help but be shocked. They all took a step forward. "You're looking to die." Suddenly, the purple-robed warden coldly called out and threw a palm strike at Yang Tian. The power of this palm strike was different from the previous one. The palm strike just now was a pure and powerful force of impact. However, the force from the palm strike had actually caused the surrounding space to become viscous. Yang Tian moved, wanting to dodge, but he discovered that his body seemed to have been glued to it. "It really is powerful." Boom! Yang Tian exclaimed inside. His left shoulder had been struck by the palm strike. His body was like a cannonball. With a boom, he slammed into the side of the crater behind him. Just like how the little blue dragon had been struck, Yang Tian had also created a huge crater in the crater. His body was buried by the rocks. Yang Tian. Seeing that Yang Tian had been struck, Huey Meow Meow could not help but cry out in shock. Although Huey Meow Meow could not help Yang Tian out of fear for her clan, she was still very concerned about Yang Tian. She did not wish for Yang Tian to be injured. However, Yang Tian had still been struck. The purple-robed warden's palm strike had also demonstrated to the surrounding cultivators just how weak a returnance cultivator was before 100 transformations cultivator. Yang Tian's left shoulder was numb as he was buried by the rocks. He could not feel his left arm at all. The physical damage of the palm strike was not very strong. It was mainly due to its energy attribute. It was extremely destructive to cells. Moreover, once the energy entered the enemy's body, it would be very difficult to expel it. Looking at where Yang Tian was buried by the rocks, the purple-robed warden put down his hand and sneered. He had great confidence in this palm strike. He believed that Yang Tian was not far from death. However, he did not know that Yang Tian possessed origin force. The palm strike that had entered Yang Tian's body had been stopped at his left shoulder and left arm. It could not spread out. Moreover, under the influence of origin force, the palm strike was quickly disintegrated. Yang Tian originally wanted to charge out of the rocks, but at this moment, he had a thought and stopped. This time, he had to kill that purple-robed warden. Therefore, he could not move for now. Yang Tian relied on his mental strength and origin force. He could see that the purple-robed warden did not have much energy left in his body. He had been injured by the giant tortoise's self-explosion and was not very strong. If the Radiance Baixing had listened to Huey Chanchan's suggestion and attacked these wardens, he might have been able to kill them all. However, this was only a beautiful dream. The Radiance Baixing was the leader of a clan. He would not act on impulse. In less than 3 minutes, Yang Tian's left arm had regained feeling. At this moment, the strange program was of great help. It emerged from the insectoid brain pendant in the form of a ray of blue light. It circled around the insectoid brain pendant and turned into a thin blue line. It rapidly passed through the pendant and formed a rune array. To the people outside, Yang Tian's life aura was getting weaker and weaker. When Yang Tian's life aura completely disappeared, Huey Meow Meow's eyes turned red. She was extremely disappointed. Sigh. At this moment, the radiant Baixing also shook his head and sighed. To these people, Yang Tian's death meant that he was heavily injured and dead. Chapter 675. Two of you, go and dig him out. After Yang Tian's life force disappeared, the purple-robed officer said with disdain. As soon as he said that, Huey Meow Meow jumped into the pit and quickly dug out the rocks that buried Yang Tian. Yang Tian's body was soon exposed. At this moment, Yang Tian was already prepared. When his eyes sensed the light, he suddenly opened his eyes. Huey Meow Meow's beautiful face appeared in front of him. At this moment, there was a sad expression on Huey Meow Meow's face. Her eyes were red. When she saw Yang Tian suddenly open his eyes, Huey Meow Meow was so shocked that she almost screamed out loud. Bang! At this moment, Yang Tian could not care less about Huey Meow Meow. He pushed her away and jumped up from the rocks. In the air, he pointed at the purple-robed officer. At this moment, no one was able to react in time. Whoosh! Whoosh! When Yang Tian's finger hit the purple-robed officer's forehead, there was a sharp sound of energy rushing at high speed. Then, there was the sound of the purple-robed officer's head exploding. This finger was formed by Yang Tian using his mind power and a large amount of force to form a sharp force. With the help of his mind power, the force's speed was very fast. It was so fast that the purple-robed officer had just thought about dodging when Yang Tian's finger force had already hit his forehead. Boom! At this moment, Yang Tian, who was in the air, suddenly flipped in the air. With his head facing down, he slammed his palm into the pit. It was like a bomb had exploded. With a loud bang, a large amount of rocks mixed with colorful crystals splashed into the pit and rained down. At this moment, no one could stop the cultivators who were watching. They all began to fight for the colorful crystals that fell nearby. They did not care about what happened between Yang Tian and the officers. Obtaining the life crystals was the most important thing. Although most of them had been taken away by Yang Tian, there were still many colored crystals. Amidst the chaos, only a few people noticed that the bottom of the crater had been penetrated, and a hole several meters in diameter had appeared. As for Yang Tian, he had already rushed into the cave. In fact, Yang Tian had already thought of a way out before he attacked. He had the chance to kill the purple-robed officer, but he couldn't kill the remaining 12 officers. After killing someone, if one didn't escape as soon as possible, it would really be a dead end. Fortunately, the little blue dragon had already scouted the area. The underground was full of crisscrossing caves, and it was the perfect place for Yang Tian to hide. With the help of the strange program, Yang Tian could conceal his presence and prevent others from discovering him. Once the little blue dragon's injuries were healed and this storm was over, he would be able to come out. At that time, he and the little blue dragon would definitely be different from now. Purring. A rock smashed into the purple-robed officer's head. The purple-robed officer, who had turned into a corpse, fell stiffly to the ground. Just like many of the people that Yang Tian had killed before, the purple-robed officer's corpse began to melt after falling to the ground. Yang Tian's force was very destructive. Cells that were eroded by the force would quickly disintegrate. The human body was mostly made up of water. If the cells that maintained the water in the body collapsed, the entire body would become a pile of liquid. Grand glory! Seeing the purple-robed officer that had been hit by Yang Tian fall to the ground dead, another purple-robed, middle-aged female officer opened her eyes wide in shock. After being stunned for a moment, she screamed and flashed to the corpse. She couldn't help but be shocked because the officer that had been killed by Yang Tian was called Grand Glory. He had an extremely high position in the Everlasting Temple, and his prestige was second only to the Temple Master. This time, the three temples had worked together, and Grand Glory was the leader of this operation. At the same time, this person was also a high-level talisman master. He was very important to the Everlasting Temple. The talisman formation that had killed the giant tortoise was designed by Grand Glory on the spot. More importantly, this middle-aged female officer had an ambiguous relationship with Grand Glory. In the purple-robed female officer's eyes, Grand Glory's body quickly turned into a dark red liquid. Even his bones had melted, leaving behind a soaked purple robe. "Yang Tian, I'm going to kill you! Kill you!" Grand Glory's death had enraged the purple-robed female officer. She roared at the sky. Extremely destructive sound waves came from her mouth. Purring, purring, purring. Under the impact of the sound waves, the cultivators that were fighting for the colorful crystals nearby exploded one by one. Hueha Baixing raised his right hand and unleashed a powerful suction force towards the dazed Hueha Chanchan. He used his energy to protect her and prevent her from exploding. The purple-robed female officer's howl quickly calmed everyone down. Many cultivators once again witnessed how powerful a person who had reached the 100 transformation realm was. She could kill people with her voice alone without using her hand. "Elder brother, who is this woman? She's so powerful." Hueha Chanchan looked at the little green tortoise in her arms and asked Hueha Baixing curiously. Hueha Baixing had once been a deacon of a temple, so he naturally knew the officers of the three temples. He sized up the purple-robed middle-aged woman and said calmly, "She's called Ku Man. What a terrible name." Hueha Chanchan said. Perhaps Ku Man heard Hueha Chanchan's voice. She looked coldly at Hueha Chanchan. Soon, she shifted her gaze to the little green tortoise in Hueha Chanchan's arms. Hueha Baixing also noticed Ku Man's gaze and glared at her coldly. Grand Glory had failed to kill his sister earlier because of the temple's pressure. He could only bear with it. If Ku Man wanted to do it again, Hueha Baixing wouldn't hold back. Humph! Ku Man snorted when he saw Hueha Baixing's cold gaze. He turned around and glanced at the cultivators around him. He said calmly, "Whoever kills Yang Tian will be the manager of the God-rewarding palace." In the Divine Hall, the sea still had the power to appoint the managers. To the cultivators, the position of temple manager was extremely tempting. As soon as Ku Man finished speaking, someone leaped into the air and charged into the underground cave that Yang Tian had created. More people suddenly spread out and entered the caves around the basin to search for Yang Tian. The encirclement of Yang Tian had begun. What was Yang Tian doing now? After Yang Tian charged into the underground cave, he didn't stop. He immediately sprinted through the cave. When he encountered a fork, he chose the cave that slanted downward. As he sprinted, Yang Tian didn't forget to use his mental power to erase the traces he left behind. A few minutes later, Yang Tian didn't even know where he was. To Yang Tian's delight, the injured little blue dragon had woken up. It opened its eyes and looked very dispirited. "Xiao Long, I helped you get rid of that guy. This is the price he'll pay for injuring you." Yang Tian slowly relaxed after the little blue dragon woke up. As he ran, he told the little blue dragon what had just happened. Chapter 676. The cave was so dark that he could not even see his own fingers. But with his spirit power, Yang Tian did not need any light and could clearly sense what was going on in the cave. To Yang Tian, this kind of environment was beneficial to him. He did not know how long he had been running, but a small cave with a diameter of less than 2 meters appeared in front of him. It was most likely dug out by a small ultra beast. Yang Tian crouched down and entered the cave. After walking for less than 100 meters, he had reached the end of the small cave. The space at the end of the cave was much larger. It was about 5 or 6 meters in diameter. In the cave, there was the skeleton of a small ultra beast. He did not know how long this ultra beast had been dead, as its skeleton was almost weathered away. Yang Tian had an idea. This was a good place to hide. He immediately returned to the entrance of the small cave and slammed his palm at the top of the cave where the three caves intersected. Boom! With a loud bang, the top of the cave collapsed and buried the entrance. Yang Tian was not worried at all after creating such a big commotion. The cave network was so dense that the sound could be transmitted through the cave. No one would be able to tell where the sound came from. After sealing the cave, Yang Tian immediately returned to the end of the cave. After putting down the little blue dragon, Yang Tian immediately took out some green stones from his storage bracelet. These green stones were collected by Yang Tian when he was building the underground city for the Hui family. They were all standard-sized green stones. These green stones were good materials for carving runes. Each of them was about 20 centimeters long, 10 centimeters wide, and 5 centimeters thick. They looked like green bricks. Yang Tian could use these green stones to carve runes that could hide his aura. Once his aura was hidden, it would be impossible for anyone outside to find him. Even if all the caves in this area were to collapse, Yang Tian would not be afraid. At his level of cultivation, he was not afraid of being buried alive. The strange program controlled Yang Tian's body, and in less than 5 minutes, he had carved runes on the 18 green stones. Under the guidance of the strange program, Yang Tian placed the 18 green stones around the cave. When Yang Tian placed a standard-size Laos crystal in the hollow of one of the blue stones, the glyph array was activated. Rune energy was released from each of the blue stones, and when they combined, they enveloped the entire cave. At this moment, the auras emitted by Yang Tian and the little blue dragon were completely enveloped by the talisman array, and none of it leaked out. However, the energy outside, such as sound, could be transmitted into the array and detected by Yang Tian inside the array. Actually, Yang Tian could have the strange program draw a teleportation rune array and teleport him back to the Hui family's underground city. When designing the dungeon, Yang Tian created a secret area in the dungeon. This place was the intersection point of the entire underground city's rune array system. As long as Yang Tian was willing, he could control the entire underground city from this secret place. The Hui Baixing's worries were reasonable. The reason why Yang Tian did this was to prevent the Hui family from killing him after the construction of the dungeon was completed. Teleporting back to the Hui family was a good idea. However, before that, he had to raise his cultivation level. Other than the members of the Hui family, the other family clans had already entered the underground cavern. Hui Miao Miao had wanted to enter the cave to find Yang Tian, but she was stopped by the Hui Baixing. The Hui Baixing said to Hui Miao Miao, "It's useless for you to go down. There are too many people. I believe that Yang Tian will be fine. Don't forget about his abilities." The Hui Baixing was naturally referring to Yang Tian's attainments in the Talisman Dao. When Hui Miao Miao heard this, her nervous mood relaxed and she couldn't help but laugh. In the Cloud region, Hui Miao Miao had heard that thousands of years ago, the Sky region God Temple had mobilized tens of thousands of talisman masters in order to build a floating palace in the sky. It had taken them more than 3,000 days and nights to complete the design. 1 year on this continent was 299 days. In other words, the talisman masters of the Sky region God Temple had used more than 10 years to design the Sky City. Then, they had used another 100 years to complete the construction of the Sky region God Temple. When the dungeon was being built, Hui Miao Miao had thought of this and asked Yang Tian how long it would take for him to design a floating city in the sky. Yang Tian's answer was that it would take less time than designing the dungeon. At that time, Hui Miao Miao didn't believe it. When the dungeon was completed and started operating, Hui Miao Miao realized that it was just as Yang Tian had said. The details of the dungeon were much more complicated than the Sky City. If Yang Tian wasn't lying, then his attainments in the Talisman Dao were greater than the Talisman Masters of the Sky region God Temple. The talisman Dao was very mysterious. Since Yang Tian was so powerful in the talisman Dao, it shouldn't be difficult for him to use the talisman Dao to escape, right? While the two were talking, Hui Chanchan kept looking at the little green turtle lying on her hand. The little turtle had a very good impression of Hui Chanchan. It kept rubbing its head against Hui Chanchan's hand, making her chuckle. Seeing his sister so happy, Hui Baixing couldn't help but shake his head. He knew that the little green turtle that Hui Chanchan had obtained would definitely be taken away by the Sky Region God Temple. The officials of the Sky Region God Temple didn't go down to the cave. Ku Man collected the items left behind by Hong Yao and then stood at the edge of the cave. He was lost in thought as he stared at the bottom of the cave. No one knew what he was thinking. As for the other officials, some were treating the injured officials who had yet to wake up. Others were sitting cross-legged on the ground to heal their injuries. They were all waiting for the news from below. If they didn't kill Yang Tian, the Sky Region God Temple would definitely become a laughingstock if this matter was made known. People would say, "Isn't the Sky Region God Temple very powerful?" However, they couldn't even do anything to a returnance cultivator. Yang Tian would definitely become famous across the entire continent. No, Yang Tian was already famous. In all the years since the establishment of the Sky Region God Temple, there had never been a case where a low-level cultivator had killed off an official of the Sky Region God Temple. If it were not for the fact that her presence was still rather chaotic, Ku Man definitely would have gone down to the cave personally to find and kill Yang Tian. Arg! Suddenly, Hui Chanchan cried out in shock. Hueha Baixing, Hueha Miao Miao, and the head manager of the hunting department and the 3 clan elders all looked at Hueha Chanchan. They saw that Little Green had bitten a hole in Hueha Chanchan's hand and blood was seeping out. However, after Hui Chanchan cried out, she actually calmed down. She even smiled. As for the little green turtle, it actually began to glow with a faint green light. It's recognizing its master. Seeing this, Hueha Baixing was stunned for a moment before he muttered to himself in surprise. Chapter 677. It was extremely rare for a cultivator to gain the recognition of a mutated beast and become its companion, especially for a high-level mutated beast. A divine beast would never acknowledge a human. This little green turtle was the descendant of the giant turtle. It was obvious that it wasn't an ordinary mutated beast. It had the bloodline of a divine beast. How could Hui Baixing not be surprised that it had signed a blood contract with Hui Chanchan? Hui Baixing was extremely excited. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that Hui Chanchan's future would be limitless with this little green turtle. As long as Hui Chanchan and the little green turtle grew, the entire clan would benefit. Ku Man, who was standing not far away, was also shocked when he saw this scene. Ku Man frowned and walked towards Hui Chanchan. Seeing Ku Man's action, Hui Baixing took 2 steps forward and protected Hui Chanchan behind him. Hui Miao Miao and the 3 elders immediately walked to Hui Baixing's left and right. At the same time, more than 100 members of the hunting division took out their weapons and prepared for battle. Hui Chanchan, who had been recognized by the little green turtle, suddenly became extremely important to the Hui clan. Even if they had to offend the temple, Hui Baixing had to bring Hui Miao Miao back safely. As long as they didn't kill anyone, their relationship with the temple wouldn't be so bad. There would be a way to ease the tension, right? Don't worry. I'll definitely protect you in the future and won't let anyone hurt you. Are you hungry? I still have some meat here. Hui Chanchan didn't notice the abnormalities of Ku Man and her elder brother at all. She was focused on communicating with the little green turtle. At this moment, Hui Chanchan and the little green turtle formed a mysterious mental connection. The human and the turtle's minds were connected. Hui Chanchan quickly took out a piece of dried beast meat and fed it to the little green turtle. Sir, please wait. When Ku Man was less than 5 meters away from him, Hueha Baisheng said coldly. Ku Man furrowed his brows, and his expression became very ugly. He was clearly very unhappy. However, she still stopped. Our limitless temple wants this little girl. Ku Man took a deep breath and said indifferently. What did that mean? Hui Baisheng and the 3 elders turned around and looked at each other. Ku Man, this isn't appropriate. Just as Radiance Baisheng was about to ask, a white-robed official appeared behind Ku Man and smiled. 100 territories, what are you trying to do? The Sky Domain Divine Palace Secretary, who was called 100 territories by Ku Man, smiled and said, Hong Yao wanted to kill them before. Think about it, do you think they would join your limitless divine palace? If it were me, I wouldn't be at ease either. Our Sky Domain God Palace is different, ha ha ha. Then, Baiyu stroked his beard and laughed. If that's the case, why don't you join our Starry Sky Temple? A blue-robed female secretary even prettier than Ku Man came over and smiled. We have the most female cultivators in the Space God Temple. Joining us is the best choice, right? What was going on? All 3 temples wanted Hui Chanchan to join their temple. Although the 3 temples had joined forces to force the giant tortoise to its death, it did not mean that they were of the same breath and branch. Usually, there was fierce competition between the 3 temples. However, 100 territories was right. Even if she wanted to join a temple, she definitely wouldn't join the limitless divine palace. Can we consider it? The Radiance Disaster Baisheng said with a smile in the face of the 3 officials' invitation. To the Radiant Disaster 100 stars, this was an extremely good thing. Sure. However, once we're done here, you'll have to give us an answer. Baiyu said with a smile. Okay. Radiance Baisheng immediately nodded. Ku Man coldly snorted, flicked his sleeves and left. She knew that Hui Chanchan was not fated to join the limitless divine palace. Who could be blamed for this? She could only blame Hong Yao, who was killed by Yang Tian. If it wasn't for him, the little blue dragon wouldn't have been injured, Yang Tian wouldn't have gotten angry, and he wouldn't have died. Ah, you perverted tortoise! Suddenly, Hui Chanchan screamed. Because the little green tortoise wanted to rest after eating its fill, it jumped to her collar and quickly went in. Feeling the itch in front of her chest, Hui Chanchan's face turned red. Under everyone's gaze, she couldn't reach her hand into her collar and take out the little green tortoise. Ha ha ha! Seeing this, Radiance Baisheng couldn't help but laugh. After sleeping for a long time, Qin Fei finally woke up. When she opened her eyes, what appeared in front of her was a dark red color. The air was filled with a very strange smell of rotten wood. As the air flowed, it made a woo-woo sound. The place where Qin Fei was currently at was an enormous transmission array platform. Ka. Suddenly, a series of footsteps entered Qin Fei's ears. It sounded like the sound of hard boots stepping on rock. The footsteps were very dense. It didn't sound like one person. Qin Fei became alert. She still didn't know that she had been teleported to the divine tomb. Clenching her teeth, Qin Fei used all the strength she had in her life to support herself and sit up with both hands. The light was very dim. There was a black powdery substance in the air. Her vision was blocked and she couldn't see far. After a few minutes, the footsteps came closer. 8 tall black figures appeared in front of Qin Fei's eyes. After the black figures appeared on the teleportation platform, they spread out and surrounded Qin Fei. They slowly approached Qin Fei. As they got closer, Qin Fei could clearly see who this tall, human-shaped shadow was. They were all monsters with human bodies and beast heads, wearing armor and holding bone spikes in their hands. The beast heads looked like wolves. The 8 humanoid monsters stopped about 3 meters away from Qin Fei. After carefully sizing Qin Fei up, they all opened their mouth. Large amounts of saliva flowed out from the corners of their mouth. A putrid smell immediately appeared in the air. Not dead yet. Great. Not bad. delicious. Yes. I haven't eaten in a long time. I want to eat. Yes. The 8 monsters opened their mouths one after another and spoke the language of the divine dominion. Their voices were very hoarse and strange. After the monsters finished speaking, they once again approached Qin Fei. She was going to be eaten by these monsters. What should she do? Qin Fei's heart was filled with unwillingness. She hadn't seen Yang Tian yet. How could she die now? Boom! Suddenly, Qin Fei could not help but hold her head and scream. A powerful energy suddenly burst out from her body. The 8 monsters with human bodies and beast heads exploded when they were hit by the energy. Their bodies turned into countless black particles and were blown away by the air. Chapter 678. Qin Fei did not know that a powerful force had erupted from her body and turned the bodies of the 8 monsters into powder. After a while, there was no more movement around her. Qin Fei raised her head and found that the 8 monsters had long disappeared. After being surprised, Qin Fei miraculously regained her strength. She lifted her skirt and walked down the stone step. There was no other sound in this world except for the sound of the wind. While walking, Qin Fei found that the ground was full of human-shaped bones. These bones were scattered, and there were teeth marks on each bone as if they had been gnawed by something. Seeing this, Qin Fei became even more vigilant. These human bones were of different colors. Some were silver-white, as if they were made of silver. Some were blue, as if they were sapphires. There were also red, green, purple gods were also ranked. There were a total of 6 levels. They were named according to the universe's starry sky. Translated into human language, the lowest level was Meteor God, followed by Planet God, Stellar God, Superstar God, Realm God, and Sky God. Under normal circumstances, the color of the robe of each level corresponded to the color of their bones. The bones of the Meteor God were silvery white, the bones of the Planet God were green, the bones of the Stellar God were red, the bones of the Superstar God were blue, the bones of the Realm God were golden, and the bones of the Celestial God were purple. In addition, if the gods wore robes that did not match the color of their bones, their level could be distinguished from the star-shaped mark on their sleeve. In the god realm, the level of the gods was very strict. No gods were allowed to overstep their boundaries. Otherwise, they would be severely punished. As soon as Qin Fei entered the god realm, a high-level god verified her bones and determined that she was a stellar god. Among the many gods in the god realm, her position was neither high nor low. She was considered a mid-level god. Seeing so many bones of different colors, Qin Fei immediately understood that she had been teleported to the tomb of the god of sin. In the legends of the god realm, the tomb of the god of sin was actually the 3rd continent, the land of the dead. After the gods died, their corpses would be teleported here. Thinking that this was the tomb of the god of sin, Qin Fei's heart could not help but tighten. Legend had it that this was a place where one could enter but not leave. Even the most powerful living god could not leave here. Only the ancient gods who built these 3 continents could travel freely between the 3 continents. Crack! Just as Qin Fei was worried, a cracking sound suddenly rang out in front of her. The light in this world was very dim, and her vision was less than 50 meters. When she heard this voice and thought of the 8 monsters from before, Qin Fei became afraid. After being stunned for a moment, Qin Fei lifted her skirt, turned around, and ran. After running for half an hour, Qin Fei had already lost her sense of direction. The teleportation formation that had sent her to this place had long since disappeared in an unknown location. After leaving the teleportation platform, there were no more human skeletons on the ground. Instead, there were countless beast skeletons. Most of these skeletons were complete skeletons. Qin Fei was only a girl. Being surrounded by these skeletons, she felt as if she had entered hell. She became more and more afraid and lonely. Boom! Ah! You undead spirits, go to hell! Boom, boom, aolo, aolo. Just as he was feeling confused and scared, he suddenly heard a loud explosion in front of him. It was like the sound of a bomb exploding. Immediately after, there were angry shouts and roars of beasts. It sounded like someone was fighting with exotic beasts. The shouts of humans sounded like they were made by flesh and blood. Qin Fei's eyes lit up, and she immediately ran toward the direction of the sound. More than 10 minutes later, a scene that shocked Qin Fei appeared in front of her eyes. She saw a 5-meter-tall man with a pair of black wings on his back. He was holding a large sword and fighting with more than a dozen humanoid beast-headed monsters of the same size. The black powder floating in the air was much thinner in the place where they were fighting. The visibility had reached hundreds of meters, which was why Qin Fei was able to see everything clearly. The explosion was the sound of the sword in the man's hand slashing on the ground. Boom! With a flap of his wings, the man suddenly flew into the air and swooped down, cutting a monster in half from head to toe. The momentum of the sword did not stop there. When it slashed on the ground, it created a deep trench that was dozens of meters long. The monster that was cut in half by the man turned into black sand after falling to the ground. Black Star, your battle isn't over yet. Ha ha! Just as the man killed a monster, another person's voice suddenly came from the sky. Then, a whistling sound could be heard. Another man who was also 5 meters tall and had black wings on his back descended and joined the battle. Very quickly, the dozen monsters were all killed by the two of them. Seeing the ferocious looks of the two men, Qin Fei frowned and carefully retreated. Qin Fei only turned around and ran when the two giants could no longer be seen. In this world where the environment was harsh, Qin Fei did not dare to appear casually. Otherwise, the consequences would be unpredictable. However, Qin Fei had already been discovered. She had not run far when she heard a whoosh from above her head. One of the men that was fighting with the monsters earlier landed in front of her and blocked her way. At this time, the man's body was not as tall as before. Instead, he had returned to his normal human form. He was about 2 meters tall. "Who are you?" After blocking Qin Fei, the man asked with a frown. This man was speaking the language of the Divine Dominion. Qin Fei did not want to answer. She turned around and ran. However, she had only run a few steps when another man blocked her again. After Qin Fei was blocked again, a questioning voice came from behind her again. "Who are you? You haven't answered me." Qin Fei had no choice but to answer. I was teleported here. From the Divine Dominion? As soon as Qin Fei finished speaking, the man behind her asked again. Yes. Qin Fei nodded. You're a god? I was before, but not anymore. You're not dead. They teleported you here, right? Yes. Qin Fei nodded again. After the other party finished asking, Qin Fei also had many questions. She turned around and asked the man behind her, "Who are you?" The man laughed. "We're gods that were defeated a long time ago. We had no choice but to come to this continent." How did you survive?" Qin Fei asked again. After running for so long, she did not see any trees, grass, or water. There was also no energy in the space that she could absorb. In such an environment, Qin Fei could not imagine how these gods managed to survive. The man smiled again and said, "No matter how beautiful a place is, there will be filthy places. No matter how harsh a place is, there will be a paradise. You'll know when you come with us." Chapter 679. In the dark cave, Yang Tian released the life crystal that the little blue dragon had eaten earlier from his storage bracelet. The little blue dragon held the life crystal with both of its claws and started eating. The little blue dragon was severely injured after being hit by the purple-robed officer. It needed a large amount of energy to recover. Yang Tian had many things that could be used to recharge his energy. For example, He had stellar crystals, high-level monster cores, and even the dragon balls that he had obtained from the dragon territory. Although these things would dissipate very quickly, they could still be used to recharge his energy after being eaten. He was not sure if it was enough. While the little blue dragon was eating the life crystal, Yang Tian released a colorful crystal that was left behind after the giant tortoise had self-destructed from his storage bracelet. Yang Tian's intuition told him that the crystal was something good. It might even be more precious than the life crystal. As soon as the colorful crystal was released, it emitted a bright colorful glow in the dark. It looked very beautiful. The colorful crystal was only the size of a fist. Yang Tian held it in his hand and observed it carefully. Without using his mind power to test it, Yang Tian could clearly feel the faint energy waves that were emitted from it. It was similar to the life crystal. However, it was just an energy wave. It could not be absorbed. It was like water. Water could be drunk, but the sound it made was useless to the human body. Upon closer inspection, Yang Tian realized that the main body of the crystal was translucent. The reason why it looked colorful was that there were many thin lines of different colors inside. They looked like the capillaries in the human body. They were of different sizes and colors. After looking at it with his naked eye, Yang Tian gathered a trace of his mind power and wrapped it around the crystal. However, Yang Tian was disappointed that the crystal was not like the stellar crystals that could be directly absorbed by mind power. Mind power could not be absorbed. Most of the time, it could not be digested even if it was swallowed. Yang Tian had studied the life crystal before and realized that it was the same for the life crystal in the mutated beasts' bodies. The life crystal could be absorbed this way. However, the amount of mind power consumed was obviously not proportional to the speed of absorption. Absorbing the energy of the life crystal would require a specialized skill while refining the life crystal into a pill. Although Yang Tian was temporarily unable to absorb the energy of this colored crystal, he could use it to illuminate the area. The electrical equipment brought from the previous world could not be used. They would be destroyed as soon as they were taken out. Now in the darkness, Yang Tian could use these colored crystals to illuminate the area. Yang Tian took out more than half of the colorful crystals he had collected. With more crystals, the light became very bright. It was even brighter than the light emitted by more than 10 candles. Next, Yang Tian took out the scroll he had obtained from the dragon's starfield. Having been in this world for some time, Yang Tian had learned the language and writing of this world. This scroll was recorded in the language of this world. With the help of the strange program, Yang Tian had already memorized the content. He only took it out now because he wanted to take a closer look at it. The more Yang Tian looked at the skill recorded in the scroll, the more confused he became. Sometimes things were like this. The more you knew, the more you would feel that you did not understand. After he finished reading, Yang Tian closed the scroll. He could not help but wonder if the cultivation method recorded in the scroll could only be comprehended and cultivated after reaching the immortal travel realm or above. Actually, Yang Tian had already realized this before. That was why he wanted to obtain the Hui clan's complete cultivation skill. After helping the Hui clan build the underground city, Yang Tian naturally got what he wanted. He obtained the Hui clan's complete cultivation skill. Yang Tian had already memorized this skill. Actually, he obtained this skill mainly because he wanted to know how to break through from the illusion realm to the destiny comprehension realm. Yang Tian was currently at the peak of the origin realm. As long as he had enough energy, he could successfully break through to the peak of the illusion realm. Then, the next step would be to break through to the destiny comprehension realm. The little blue dragon quickly finished eating half of the destiny comprehension life crystal. To the little blue dragon, half of the life crystal's energy was no longer enough. Yang Tian took out all the life crystals that he had exchanged for from his storage bracelet. There were also large amounts of stellar crystals, high-grade beast cores, and even dragon balls. Among these things, apart from the lice crystals, they began to rapidly dissipate as soon as they were released, turning into free energy. However, with the protection of the talisman array, these energies could not be released for a while. The little blue dragon immediately enlarged its body. It opened its mouth and sucked all the energy that Yang Tian had released into its stomach. These things seemed like a lot, but compared to half of the Destiny Comprehension Life Crystal, their energy was far inferior. Xiao Long, why don't you try swallowing these colorful crystals? Yang Tian suggested when he saw that the little blue dragon was still not satisfied. The little blue dragon nodded. Could only give it a try. If he had known that this would happen, Yang Tian would have asked the Radiance 100 Stars for some pills that were refined from life crystals. Although such pills were extremely precious, he believed that the Radiance 100 Stars would not reject his request. However, Yang Tian insisted on joining the hunting division at that time, which went against the Radiance 100 Stars' wishes. It was inappropriate for him to make such a request. At that moment, Yang Tian hoped that the colorful crystals were higher-grade life crystals that could be directly absorbed by the little blue dragon. The colorful crystals that Yang Tian collected were all big pieces. The smallest one was the size of a fist, while the largest one was the size of a soccer ball. To be safe, Yang Tian used his sword to cut off a piece that was smaller than a finger and put it into the little blue dragon's mouth. After the little blue dragon swallowed it, Yang Tian was excited. However, after a few minutes, the little blue dragon did not react at all. In other words, even with the little blue dragon's omnipotent body, it could not directly digest the crystals. Could it be that the crystals could not be absorbed? Yang Tian immediately frowned. With a puff, the little blue dragon spat out the crystals that could not be digested. Boom! Suddenly, a loud noise came from outside, and the whole cave trembled. Judging from the sound, the source of the noise was not far from the cave. Yang Tian came back to his senses and became alert. Although he had concealed his presence, he could not guarantee that he would not be found by others. Clang, 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 after the loud noise, there was the sound of weapons clashing. Yang Tian let out a sigh of relief. He knew that there were people fighting. Most of the thousands of cultivators were fugitives from the hunting division. They were all hot-tempered. It was normal for them to meet in this underground cave and fight. Yang Tian ignored the commotion outside the cave and focused on his thoughts. The commotion outside quickly stopped, and silence was restored. Time passed by minute. Yang Tian suddenly discovered that within the range of the talisman formation, there was a strange type of free energy. This energy was being emitted from the colorful crystals. The colorful crystals did not emit energy quickly. In the beginning, the concentration was very low. Yang Tian did not notice it. Under the restriction of the talisman formation, when the concentration reached a certain level, it finally attracted Yang Tian's attention. This discovery made Yang Tian excited. He immediately used a trace of his mind power and quickly traveled through the entire space a few times. After using his mind power to envelop some of the free energy emitted by the colorful crystals, Yang Tian sent it into the original realm within his body. Although the original realm was huge, this trace of energy was very little. Yang Tian could clearly feel that this trace of energy was indeed as he had expected. It could be purified by the original realm and become part of Yang Tian's own energy. It was good that it could be absorbed. Next, the problem Yang Tian had to solve was how to make the colorful crystals emit energy faster. It could be 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times, or even 10,000 times. Yang Tian picked up another colorful crystal and enveloped it with his mind power. This time, Yang Tian was surprised to find that after being touched by his mind power, the crystal seemed to have a consciousness and no longer emitted energy. This was really an interesting phenomenon. Chapter 680. In order to increase the speed at which these crystals emitted energy, they could use a talisman array to speed up the passage of time in a certain area. After a short period of calculation, the strange program finished designing the time talisman array. Yang Tian took out 28 pieces of bluestone from his storage bracelet. The strange program controlled Yang Tian's body as usual and began to inscribe runes on the bluestone. Compared to the aura concealing array, the time talisman array was much more difficult and required a long time to complete. Time slowly passed, and the sound of cultivators walking or fighting could be heard from outside. No matter how close the sound was, Yang Tian's heart remained calm at all times, not allowing his thoughts to affect the strange program. Inscribing runes was a very delicate job. If his hand trembled slightly, he would have to inscribe them again. At this time, Limitless Temple's Ku Man's mood was completely different from Yang Tian's. After thousands of cultivators entered the underground cave, she couldn't find Yang Tian for a long time, so she couldn't help but feel a little annoyed. The longer this went on, the more she felt embarrassed. Before there was a result, no one could leave here. Although the temple's supervisor didn't say it explicitly, everyone knew it in their hearts. This won't work. There's no light down there and there's a lot of people. Even if Yang Tian passed by, most people wouldn't know. In order to find Yang Tian, the people down there have to check each other every time they meet. During this time, there's been a lot of fighting. Sky Domain Temple's supervisor Bai Yu came to Ku Man's side and said with a frown. At least in the matter of dealing with Yang Tian, the three temples stood on the same side. If only the Limitless Temple's people were here and Yang Tian killed them, the Sky Domain Temple and Starry Sky Temple wouldn't care about it. But it was different with people from the two temples present. If the Limitless Temple lost its dignity, the other two temples would also lose face. Then what do you think we should do? Ku Man turned to look at Guan Bai Yu and asked indifferently. Bai Yu said, "Call everyone back and mark everyone's bodies. Let them go down again. Every time they search a cave, seal it. This way, at least Yang Tian will be trapped down there temporarily." And then? After Bai Yu finished, Ku Man asked again. Bai Yu smiled and said, "If we really can't find him, this way we can guarantee that Yang Tian is in the cave below. Then, we can set up a flame array in the sky above this place. I don't believe that he won't come out." Ku Man said, "That is a good idea. I was a little anxious before. However, everyone who comes up will have to undergo a strict inspection." Bai Yu smiled and said, "I hope he doesn't come out. It's been a long time since our three sacred halls worked together to set up such a large formation, right?" Ku Man coldly snorted, a minor character. If he can force us to use our grand array, then he should be honored. After he finished speaking, Ku Man shouted loudly, "Everyone below, listen up. Immediately return to the surface. If you don't come out within 100 breaths of time, kill." Withered Barbarian's voice spread far and wide. Even thousands of meters underground could hear her voice. Of course, Yang Tian heard it too. He knew that the higher-ups did not call everyone back because they had given up. They must be thinking of a new way. Next, he would definitely be facing a more serious situation. Yang Tian did not dare to underestimate the methods of the higher-ups. Even so, Yang Tian had expected this result. Thousands of people came down to search for him. They were not from the same family. It would be strange if they could find him. Therefore, when he heard Ku Man's voice, his heart was still as calm as water. The conversation between Ku Man and Bai Yu was heard by Hui Yi Baixing and the others clearly. After Ku Man gave the order, Hui Yi Chanchan frowned and said, "Yang Tian is in big trouble now." Hui Yi Miao Miao nodded. Flame array, cold array, shattering star, extinguishing light. They are all arrays passed down from the ancient times. The flame array is the most powerful. I didn't expect that the killing array that we didn't even use against the giant tortoise would be used on Yang Tian. When Hui Yi Miao Miao said this, Hui Yi Chan Chan exclaimed, Is the flame array that powerful? Yang Tian is proficient in runes. He should be fine, right? Also, they have lost so many people. Can they still set up such an array? Towards her sister's question, those who were not from the temple could not answer. Hui Miao Miao shook her head. However, the look on her face became even more worried. Although Yang Tian was very skilled in runes, could he deal with an array passed down from the ancient times? In this world, runes had also declined compared to the ancient times. This was because it was also a highly technical path. As time passed, the rune's information would inevitably be lost. Also, when a master taught his disciple, he would also hold back. At this time, whether it was the two sisters or Hui Baixing, they did not want anything to happen to Yang Tian. This was even more so for Hui Baixing. If Yang Tian could survive this time, Hui Baixing was more confident that he could keep Yang Tian in the Hui clan. This was because when the time came, the three temples, especially the Everlasting Temple, would definitely put Yang Tian on the wanted list all over the world. Then, the Hui clan would become Yang Tian's hiding place. Yang Tian would not be able to casually show himself outside, and he would not be able to casually go out. This way, Yang Tian would be controlled by Hui Baixing in the Hui clan, and he would be able to use his talent in runes. After Bai Man gave the order, the cultivators in the underground cave quickly rushed out from the various exits. Next, Ku Man gave the order for each family to search for their own members. This was to prevent Yang Tian from sneaking in among the cultivators who came out. Ku Man hoped that this would be the case. As long as she discovered Yang Tian would not be able to slip away under her nose again. While the cultivators were searching for Yang Tian, the supervisors had already consumed healing and energy replenishing pills. They had recovered more than half of their combat strength. Now, even if someone at the Destiny Enlightenment realm attacked them, they would not be able to defeat them. The higher one's cultivation level, the stronger one's ability to recover from injuries. Some of the supervisors who had been injured and unconscious had also woken up and were recuperating from their injuries. From this, it could be seen how powerful the three temples were. It would not be an exaggeration to say that if the supervisors of the temples joined forces, they would be able to annihilate all the family members who had come here. The cultivators who had returned to the surface gathered according to the family they belonged to and checked each other's identities. This kind of checking was actually very simple. Before they had set off, everyone had carried a life pearl with them. Once the life pearl was bound to its owner, it could not be stolen by others. This was also an effective method that each family used to prevent outsiders from sneaking in. The cultivators could change their body shape and appearance, but their life aura could not be changed. It was worth mentioning that Yang Tian had already thrown away his life pearl. To others, this kind of life pearl could not be separated from the body, but to Yang Tian, it was an extremely simple matter. Unable to find Yang Tian, the thousands of cultivators accepted another mission and went down into the underground cavern. With a set of rules, the thousands of cultivators in the underground cavern moved in an orderly manner. Every cultivator was in groups of a few. When they found that they had entered a dead end, they would immediately return and close the cavern. In less than an hour, the cultivators in the underground cavern began to return. He's definitely still down there, hee. Let's set up the flame array. Bai Yu looked at the gloomy Ku Man and said with a smile. Ku Man narrowed his eyes and said coldly, "That's the only way. Once the flame array is set up, this entire area will be turned into lava. Even if we were to fall into the array, only death awaits us. I want to see how Yang Tian will survive." Chapter 681. It's a pity that such a talisman genius has fallen just like that. Yang Tian, if you had come to my Beiming family, you wouldn't have ended up like this. Beiming Xiun couldn't help but shake her head when she saw the 30 or so clerks gathered to discuss setting up the formation. Baiming Seun sighed and looked at the radiance 100 stars not far away. Baiming Seun couldn't see anything from Baiming Baishing's face, but she noticed that his right hand was clenched into a tight fist. Clearly, Baiming Baishing didn't want to lose a talent like Yang Tian. He was worried about Yang Tian. These families had nothing to do with the rest. Soon, Ku Man gave the order and thousands of family members retreated from the basin. They all stayed on the mountain peaks around the basin. Even if the clerks told them to leave, these cultivators wouldn't be willing to. They all wanted to see the legendary 4 great ferocious formations of the primordial era and see how powerful they were. The formation was known as one of the 4 great ferocious formations. It was extremely powerful and naturally very precise. If they started from carving runes, even 300 people would find it difficult to complete it in a short time, let alone 30 clerks. However, humans were smart. The Divine Hall had thought of a simple method long ago. That was to prepare the components of the formation beforehand and use a special talisman artifact to measure them. Then, they just had to place the components of the formation in a certain position. Since Baiyu said he wanted to set up the formation, he naturally had all the components of the formation. I didn't expect Duke Baiyu to be proficient in talisman formations. We misjudged you, Ku Man said with a smile when Baiyu took out over 100 pillars of various colors and covered in runes. Baiyu smiled. Of course I can't compare to Duke Hongyao in terms of talisman formations. After saying that modestly, Baiyu flew 100 meters into the air and threw a disc-shaped runic treasure towards the center of the basin. Shortly after, this rune treasure that was used for measurement lit up with a glaring red light, shooting out hundreds of red rays of light towards the surroundings. Floating in the air, Baiyu clasped his hands together and rapidly formed hand seals. Waves of rune energy fluctuations were emitted from his hand. In the beginning, the area covered by the rune artifact was not very large. However, under the activation of the 100 territories' runic energy, the hundreds of rays of light quickly expanded until they covered most of the basin. Freeze, seeing that it was about time, Baiyu suddenly shouted and landed on the ground. According to the plan that had been discussed before, the supervisors carried several to a dozen rune components and flew to different places. The light rays projected by the talisman treasures used for surveying in the air landed on the place where the rune components were arranged. Although most of these dozens of officials weren't proficient in runes, they had cultivated for a long time and could easily set up rune components. According to the calculations of the 100 territories, the flame array would be completed in less than 1,000 breath. In the underground cave, the strange program controlled Yang Tian's body and finished carving the last piece of limestone. As soon as it took over control of the body, the strange program told Yang Tian a piece of bad news. That was because it had sensed an extremely powerful rune energy fluctuation. Although the flame array was not completed, every rune component that made up the flame array was emitting rune energy. This was the most powerful rune energy that the strange program had ever sensed. It contained spatial rune energy, time rune energy, and fire rune energy of the 5 elements. The flame array was powerful not only because it attacked the enemy with high temperatures. It also had the effect of trapping and speeding up the passage of time. The strange program's tone was extremely serious. This made Yang Tian realize that the supervisors outside wanted to use a large-scale rune array to deal with him. This was the only choice the supervisors had. Otherwise, they would have to spend a long time flipping over a large area. The supervisors at their peak could do this, but they were all injured and could not expend too much energy. To the strange program, this was a problem that it had never faced before. "Can you break it?" Yang Tian asked with a frown. The program said, "Not for now, unless they finish setting up the array. But at that time, we don't know if we'll have enough time to calculate." Yang Tian said, "Even so, we can't just sit here and wait for death, right? To Yang Tian, if he charged out now, he would be able to avoid being enveloped by the array, but that would be even more dangerous. He was only at returnance right now. As long as one of the supervisors discovered even the slightest bit of his aura, they could instantly appear before him and kill him. The strange program began to calculate. Yang Tian thought that if he had prepared the teleportation array first, he would not have been in such a passive situation. Next time, no matter how confident he was, he had to prepare a backup plan first. Around a minute later, the strange program's voice rang out, "I'm afraid it's too late to design another array now. However, you can reverse the array you just carved." Yang Tian immediately understood what the strange program meant. Previously, they had to use the time array to speed up the flow of time in a certain area. That way, the 5-colored crystal would release the energy that both he and the little blue dragon could absorb faster. If they were reversed, the flow of time in a certain area would become very slow. That way, as long as Yang Tian was in a time array, the power of any attack would be reduced by 1,000 times. Originally, the strange program had designed this time array to speed up the flow of time by 1,000 times. This was equivalent to the principle of leverage. By extending the time one could withstand an attack, the power of the attack would be reduced by 1,000 times. For example, if a normal person was struck by 1,000 kilograms of force, they would die instantly. However, if this 1,000 kilograms of force was split into 1,000 batches, the person would definitely not die. Taking advantage of the fact that the array had not been activated, Yang Tian quickly placed the limestone in the cave under the guidance of the strange program. After placing the limestone, Yang Tian suddenly slapped his forehead and smiled bitterly. Oh no, Xiao Long swallowed all the lice crystals. Previously, Yang Tian was so worried about the little blue dragon that he released all the energy bodies in his storage bracelet. He did not think that he would need to use the lice crystals later. Too much worry. Activating the array required energy, and the energy bodies that the strange program had designed to activate the array were the lice crystals. Seeing Yang Tian's distressed look, the little blue dragon opened its mouth and spat out a large pile of lice crystals. This pile of lice crystals was many times larger than the little blue dragon's current volume. It could be seen that the inside of the little blue dragon was a magical space. The lice crystals were not as easily digested as the stellar crystals. They had not been swallowed by the little blue dragon for long, so only a little was digested. Seeing this large pile of lice crystals, Yang Tian could not help but let out a sigh of relief. He thought that things had been going too smoothly for him previously, and he was a little carried away. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.